TitleMatchNetwork.com.
When I met Hogan, we were in Pensacola in about 78, 77, or 78. David Schultz and I were there together. That was the first time that we had gone down to Pensacola together. And Louis Tillett was the booker in Tampa and brought Hogan up to Pensacola because Mike Graham and those guys in Tampa didn't want to use Hogan. They didn't like him, didn't want him around. Mike Graham was a little short guy, a small guy, and a lot of guys in Tampa were smaller guys. And Mike Graham, of course, his daddy was a promoter. He wanted to be the giant killer, and he was intimidated by a guy like Hogan, 6'6", solid 300-pound, muscle guy. So Louis Tillett brought him up to Pensacola, and he was called Terry Boulder. And his brother that he brought along was Eddie Boulder, Brutus Beefcake.
Right.
But they came to Pensacola, had an old Dodge van that would barely run. We put them in the car. We carried them around to the towns with us. They didn't have money. They didn't have Beefcake. Didn't have wrestling boots. He used my wrestling boots. I would go work out with him. We would we'd go early to the matches and work out with him in the ring and teach him. He was never trained by anyone. He was trained on the road by people. People just took him along and trained him. They shared an apartment with us. They didn't have an apartment. We took our bed, our mattress, and threw it on the floor. And one of us slept on the box springs, and one slept on the mattress on the floor. That's how my relationship with Hogan was. I never asked for, help me here, help me there. When he got a big break, and he was in Minneapolis and had a big break there. David ended up going from Calgary to Minneapolis. I stayed actually in Vancouver. I went to Vancouver. I stayed there. David went to Minneapolis and did very well with Hogan, and then went on to the WWF the first year with Hogan. I didn't. I never called and said, look, David, help me. Want to talk to Hogan? Bring me in. None of that. I always wanted to make it in the wrestling business on my own merits, on my own talent, on my own abilities, without having to say, hey, you owe me. I helped you. Pay me back. That was not the case. And I never did that. So when the opportunity came for me to go to the WWF, Hogan was instrumental in that because they came to Calgary. I was there. I worked on the show that night in Calgary. He talked to me. He said, hey, man, what have you been doing? Why don't you come over and come with us? Blah, blah, blah. David, he messed up. He slapped this guy. They had to fire him. And David went nuts. I said, well, I don't know. You think I could do good there? I mean, can I make any money there? Man, you make more than you ever made in your life. Go on, brother. You got to come here. So, I went. I never asked for anything from him while I was there. I went to the WCW because, hey, brother, come on. You got to help me in the WCW. I went there with no contract, with nothing. Didn't ask for anything. Then, Bischoff was the one that promised a contract. When it came down to do the job for Johnny B. Bad on national TV, well, I'm not doing a job for anyone unless I have the same kind of a deal that everyone else has. Bischoff didn't want to go for it, and Hogan turned his back on me. Hey, brother, I can't help you. Well, if he couldn't help me, then nobody can. So
I was going to ask you about that later, but...
No, I can get into that more.
Okay,
He's an old bald-headed son of a bitch.
So actually, Hogan's whole personality has changed over the years.
Yeah, he somewhat opportunist. That's what they call him. Opportunist. What can you do for me now? And if you can't help me now, or if you can't do something for me tomorrow, then I don't need you today. Probably picked that up from Vince, from being around McMahon, because the times that I knew him prior to him being around McMahon so much, he wasn't like that. I think he probably picked that up. He was with McMahon right beside him, around him all the time for 6 or 8 years. And most of the guys that have been around, Shawn Michaels, Helmsley now, probably it's happened to The Rock. I hear his attitude's changed. Austin, Bret Hart, all those guys that were around McMahon, Savage, all the time like that, they turned out to try to be the same way.
What was your favorite angle, I guess, that you were ever involved with in the WWF?
In the WWF?
Yeah.
Oh, Andre and Hogan. Yeah.
Big business.
Yeah. Because it was, you could sink your teeth into it. It wasn't like walking around with a rooster. I mean, here you had a man.
Right.
You had something to talk about, and the hottest thing in the business right now was Hogan. and the biggest guy was Andre. And I feel Vince didn't think that I could carry the torch. He wouldn't have put me there, you know. I thought that was great, just to see that many people there. And Andre, that was his last run, and he knew it. And that's why he wanted to do that with Hogan.
Right.
And he knew he couldn't make any more money after that. He just couldn't get around anymore.
Did you realize that the WF was going to be as big as it was going to get? Or did you, you know?
When it first started, I knew that Vince was going to do something different. And then when I could see it, just different things he did that nobody else did. I said, this is the way to go. That's why I went with it.
MTV and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Entertainment getting on.
No one else did that. No one else wanted to associate anybody with anything like that. But that was the way to go. See, we should have smartened up the television people and the producers and directors. No, we smartened up the fans.
Andre, maybe at the last minute, was going to back out and not do a job. Was there any truth to that?
No. No, Andre was... He wouldn't have done that to Vince McMahon. And he wouldn't have done it to the business. If Andre was going to beat you, he'd tell you. He don't have to trick you. He could beat you. I think Hogan was concerned that he was going to do the job, that Andre was going to do it or not. But I asked the boss, I said, what are we going to do? He said, don't worry.
Since Andre never did a job, who approached him to do the job?
Andre. It was Andre's idea. Andre's idea. He realized, I believe, that this was his last big pay-per-view he could have ever gotten. And with who? Hogan. Hottest guy in the business, biggest guy in the business. And he asked Vince if I could be his manager because he trusted me. And that was a compliment. So there was never nothing to do. Boss just said, don't worry about it. And if he wanted to beat Hogan, he was going to beat him. If he didn't, he was a professional. He made his money. That's what he wanted to do, is make his money on the way out and be on the biggest one that he could be on.
The Giant. What was he like outside the ring? You've heard various.
Oh, he hated people. People always come up to him and say, how tall are you? How much you weigh? How big's your hands? Oh, he was just rude. He was just
tired of it, probably.
Oh, yeah. And he knew he only had so long to live because they told him he had the giant disease, which he would grow, but his organs wouldn't. So he had a lot of problems.
You also worked with Hulk Hogan. What was your memories of working with Hogan?
Hogan was just like a dream come true. A champion, a true champion. And I feel comfortable working with him. He would let me do anything I wanted to do to help me get myself over. He was just a real sweetheart to work with. And the last time I worked with him was in '95, was the same.
Now, was it true that Hogan basically gave you some advice about, getting paid?
Hogan told me once, he said, he came in the dressing room where we was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the Spectrum. And he said, Kamala, he said, brother, you putting asses on the seat. I hope you're getting paid because I'm getting mine. And that started me to thinking. So, I went to Vince a few times, but Vince said, if you think you can make more money somewhere else, you're welcome to go. I don't want to hold you back from making money, but it wasn't nowhere to go then.
Wow. Did you talk to Vince about it?
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah.
And what was the outcome?
He told me I was welcome to go.
Did you get
No, I stayed there because there was nowhere else to go.
Did you see increases in pay or no?
No.
You're also wrestling Hogan, I think, for the first time when he made his debut on MSG.
Hogan's first match in the Garden was with me. Yeah, and I was in the at the TV taping when Vince Sr. first laid eyes on Hogan, and I almost saw the dollar signs in his eyes myself. But I knew right away. I said, man, they here was this great, big, massive guy, had the look,
right?
And we're gonna make this guy. And I was just getting ready to leave. I'd been there about a year, and I was on my way out. I was going back to Mid-South. And so at the Garden, I went to Vince Sr. and I said, Vince, I know you want to get this guy over. I said, what would you like me to do? And he paid me probably the greatest compliment that he could for a guy that had been in the business, 4 years. He said, Ted, he says, I know you'll do it right. You do it any way you want to. I said, wow, it's okay. So I went to Terry, and I said, I want to get you over big. And, you know, he hadn't had too much experience at the time. And I said, here's what I'd like to do. And I said, man, I'm just going to, you know, just trust me. And I said, I'm going to fly for you. And we went out and had a great match, you know. But there's a match I'd like to have for my own personal, you know, library.
Right.
If I could ever, I think somebody, yeah, really.
Yeah, it's black and white, but I think we might have a better copy of it.
But
We'll have to dig it
yeah, I'd
up
like
somewhere.
to have that. But you know, I got him over, and I'll never forget. He said, "Man," he says, "Thank you very much." He said, "I owe you one." He said, "I owe you one." And he said, and I never forget a favor.
That match, the main event was you and Hogan. Why did you actually refuse to do a job to Hogan?
I saw Hogan put in a magazine or something, Roddy Piper, and says, a lot of take, not much give. I guess you're damn right. Isn't that the idea? I had been around by that time, I'm not sure how many years, and I had got over in Los Angeles. I went to Portland, then I went to Carolinas, then Atlanta, etc. So I had a track record. Now, when what they wanted, Hogan was a champion. Snuka had just got beat by Morocco. And okay, you know, going for the gusto here. It's MTV. Everybody's going to see it. We're still very much in that one-off mentality. Nobody's going WrestleMania 1. Nobody's doing that just yet. They're going, whoa, and the Greensboro show just happened, and okay, now the North comes back with the, you know, all this attention, and boom, it hit, and it took us to a place that nobody has ever been before, the sport, and kicked it off.
What was your decision to make you not want to do a job, though? You just didn't want to.
With all that I just told you, I walk in and Vince McMahon and there's Hogan. I'd never wrestled Hogan, never touched him. You got ice cream bars, I got ice cream bars. MTV, why? Wait a second. Aren't you the heavyweight champion? Yeah. Is this for the title? No. Why? Why do you want to beat me, your hottest heel, who's got Piper's Pit? Now, Lou Albano had told me a long time before that, just because we go back to my size. Because of my size. If I let somebody, they could beat me up, but beat me, I'm dead meat from there. But especially at this time, I had gotten much bigger, but I should take it down. Oh, yeah. New York, that's right. Bruno goes to, you get a 6 month, and then you're gone. And Bruno goes to you. That's the go through one you want. No, I'm standing my ground. You ain't going through. Because it wasn't like we were going to come back and do some business that would make up for the loss of real estate value. And I didn't, nor did anybody else know, with such a broad audience. It wasn't like I could change territories. What's going to come down here? And with all these unknowns going on, and McMahon putting every cent he had in it, McMahon wasn't thinking straight. I grabbed him. No, that's another story. It doesn't matter. And so I just says, no, man.
What did Vince say when you told him that you wanted to do a job? What was his reaction?
I don't think anybody had ever said that to him before. He got quite mad. And I just said, we need to look at the logics and the math of this. Are you just looking to get one out of it? Because if that's what you're looking for, who you going to get as hot as me? Straight out like that. And he kind of looked at it and I said, listen, I can't afford to do this. And that's what he did on that one.
What about Hogan? What was his attitude towards us?
Hogan had already signed with the devil there. And for him, he was coming and swooping over, and to have me there as a peg, there became a lot of sincere animosity. Him for me not doing the job, and me as in jealousy because his promoter was cottonballing this guy and he wasn't me, and that was just pure human jealousy. But it's caused for some serious sparks.
What do you remember about your first match with Hogan? I guess it was at the Paul Bosch retirement show, I think, right?
Right, the one in Houston, Texas.
Right.
It was like, I don't know, it was like unbelievable, you know. It was crazy. People ask me that now, and I'm like, man, you can't believe what it was like. It was just, it's hard to explain the noise volume and things like that. You know, when he walked out to the ring, you know, usually you go out to the ring, and it was so loud, you couldn't believe how loud. When he come through and rip his t-shirts off and do all that jazz thing and start flexing in the ring, the noise was so loud. It was unbelievable. You couldn't even talk in the ring, a match or anything. It was so loud through the whole match, you know, with him. It was crazy.
Did Hogan politic at all afterwards to work a program with you?
I don't believe so.
It was just natural.
It was just, we didn't work any angles at all. It was just a natural thing, I guess. I assume people would see me from World Class and whatever, one-man gang, you know, big old monster guy, and I assumed I looked like a threat to the title because everywhere we went, we did sell-out business. We set the attendance record in Montreal at the Forum there. We had the attendance record for years and may still stand. I don't know.
Do you feel cheated? You never got to work a singles match with Hogan on pay-per-view?
No, I mean, of course I feel cheated. I feel, you know, of course you always feel cheated. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. You know, I mean, I was just happy to be there and be part of the company for a while. And I mean, I felt that I was, you know, I had a little 3 or 4 month run with Hogan. You know, every night was somewhere, but then it was cut off like cold turkey, just cut right there. And Dibiase came in. You know, and I'm like, what the heck? What happened here?
Huh.
You know, I never did feel. You know, I hear that Dibiase, you know, had Vince's ear. You know what I'm saying? So, but. I guess I wasn't that type of person. I wasn't a big stooge. I ain't saying he was, but I know he had Vince's ear, and so
you didn't play politics.
I didn't play politics exactly. That's been my biggest downfall in my whole career. I didn't play politics.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
What about your initial impressions of Hulk Hogan?
Hulk was another guy that I helped. I helped Hogan out a lot when he was down in Tennessee. He didn't know anything. He went as Terry Boulder, and there was Beefcake as Eddie Boulder. You know, Hulk didn't know anything. He was just come out of Mike Graham school. You know, playing a bass guitar, some rock and roll band down in Florida. Then he decided he wanted to wrestle with Mike Graham and all those guys down there. They didn't really want to show him anything. So and Terry was so big then he could walk down there, people just stopped. You know. Man, he was 300 pounds and he looked great. I mean, and but he didn't know anything about wrestling. So, and I told him one time, I said, in Memphis, Tennessee, because I remember the time he wrestled in Memphis, Tennessee, they had him the promoter had him said, go out and just slam Terry. All I want you to do is pick the guy up and bear hug him and drop him. Shoot him in and bear hug him and drop him. He must have did that 15 times in the ring and won the match. Beefcake, all I want you to do is slam the guy and drop elbows. Slam the guy and drop elbows. But Terry wanted to do something else. He wanted to do more. He wanted to drop kick and everything.
Huh.
But I said, no. So he had a big old green Lincoln, big town car Lincoln. They love to go to grocery stores, buy big sacks of groceries, man, go up down highways and drink his cobs and stuff like that, fruits, apples and oranges and things. And our road trip was like 400 miles one way, you know. And then we'd drive 400 miles back and go right straight to the gym. And we'd come really close. And nobody was showing nothing in Memphis, you know, because I think that's when Jerry Lawler beat him. You know, he beat Hogan. And,
right.
And you know, that's why he hates Lawler today. I guess he still hates him. I hope not. But anyway, but Lawler did beat. In fact, Lawler beat Andre the Giant.
I remember.
Yeah. And Vince Sr. like to had a cow. when he heard about it, the midget beat my giant. Oh my God! And so when Hogan, Terry wanted it, they wanted to learn how. And so I took them to back up where my little old training camp up in Dyersburg, Tennessee. We went in there and I showed Terry some moves. I showed him how to clothesline somebody, and I showed him how to hit the ropes. I said, you do big man stuff. You roll around the ring and stuff. And I said, but it'll come natural to you. I want a drop kick. And I said, you don't need to do that. Let Beefcake do the drop. At the time, Eddie.
Right.
Let him do the drop kicks and stuff. And he left the area, and he went to Minneapolis.
For Vern.
So I never did see him until 1986 when he was in WWF. And that's when he was hot as a pistol when I went up there. But you know what? He never forgot.
He took care of you.
Koko B Ware. Yeah.
You went around, you teamed with Hogan, going against Dibiase and either Virgil or Andre in some cities.
Yeah.
What was Hogan like? I mean, was he, what was he like as a partner, as a co-employee?
Terry's the greatest guy in the world, man.
Yeah.
Dynamite dude. Real good people.
Yeah.
A lot of people tried to stab him in the back. I mean, he did help a lot of people out. And when the shit hit the fan, they all jumped on the defense bandwagon and tried to prosecute him. And he really didn't deserve that. I have a lot of respect for Terry. He's a great guy, man. He really is. At least far as much as I knew him, he was a great tag team partner. He taught me a lot. He always stepped up to the plate, and as limited as he was, he had that little finger, like that. And it was incredible, man. Me and Humperdinck and friggin' Hulk doing the Three Stooges. It's just unbelievable. Every house sold out. It's a great business, a great guy, good partner.
Oh, wow. Where was Hogan, along with the other veterans there, were they helpful to you too?
Oh, yeah, I had George Steele and Terry and Teddy. Teddy, great guy. Teddy, good people, man of God. Rehabilitated, and then you had the like Jake the Snake, who was as messed up as he is, still as far as the ability that he had was phenomenal. He was a great talent.
Yeah.
And would share that, and Macho Man would share that, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, all the old timers back then. I was a hot commodity. I was a good talent, and whenever I worked, they knew they'd have an easy night, a good match, and they all wanted to work with me. So they all, they taught me, they helped me out a lot.
When you were teaming with Hogan and everything, it seemed like the logical money match at the time would have been you versus Hogan. Was it ever going to go in that direction, or never?
Never ever.
Really? It seemed you as a monster heel against Hogan would be the money match at the time.
Would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been, but it never. I don't think it ever even dawned on them to do that.
Really?
I mean, not because it was only 9 months span when I was there till I totally was sick of it.
Yeah.
So if you could get sick of it in 9 months, but that 9 months was like 10 years because, like I said, you're doing 65, 55, 72 days on the road, day after day after day. You're never home.
Yeah.
When you got a family, it's tough.
Did it disappoint you to have never wrestled Hogan in his career?
No, not at all.
No.
What are you doing, boy?
What about Hogan?
Hogan, hey, he's a good guy, man. He's brought the business to where it is today. Terry's he's done a lot for a lot of the boys. He's done a lot for the business. He's done a lot for the fans. I mean, now it's a little bit pathetic, but hey, it's a guy that's hanging on to his career.
The thing about wrestling in those days was Hogan was the big, sort of the king.
Right.
But everybody liked Hogan. There was never anybody going, geez, we got to get rid of this guy. He's really, I think everybody loved him. He was good to everybody in the dressing room. He was really respected. Places were packed every night. There was no politics. No one was going, we got to get Hogan out of here. Like Junkyard Dog or Randy Savage or Bundy. I mean, the heels were all, they fed Hogan one heel after another, which he was so fortunate to have. He had the best array of heels that have ever been assembled in the history of the business, lined up one after another, from one-man gang to Killer Khan, all these guys, Kamala, and he drew nothing but money. But everyone was happy. Everyone was making money. It was a total work. There was girls everywhere. You know, everyone put the hotel bars, and it was a lot of fun in those days. You know, and you had to be careful of the temptations of the road. Life didn't bring you down, but you know, it was a good time in the wrestling business.
No, Hogan was over on the tour. I believe it was like in the early '80s, probably 1980 actually. And you teamed with Hulk on a lot of occasions. What was that like? And
yeah, it was good. You know, Hulk was quite the character. I used to like to rib him a lot. You know, and he was something else.
What was Hulk like back then?
He was a good guy. He was one of the boys. You know, he still didn't have the push that he wound up getting years later, and he was a pretty good guy at that time.
Do you feel he was a better worker back then than he was later years? Or?
Oh, without a doubt. You know, he never was a great worker. He was always a good talker, had charisma up the kazoo. I mean, this guy has unbelievable charisma, but he was never a great worker.
Did Hogan change at all now that he was in WWE on top?
I never really hung out with him a lot, but I think he did. You could see there was a change in him. You know, like he took care of the guys that were his buddies, because it was just a big clique there. Everybody had their own little clique, their own little crew, and they looked out for each other. I was always the outsider, and that worked in my gimmick well, because I was the loner and I didn't have no partners and all that, so it worked good for me.
What do you remember of your first main event against Hogan in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, like I always said, Hogan had charisma. He was a great talker. He wasn't a great worker. But I knew if you got on the show with him and you were out there as a heel, you're just going to be blown over, because people just love this guy. Because I remember the one time in Nassau Coliseum when I worked with him, I think it was like 22,000 people or something. You could not hear yourself think when he came out to the ring.
Was that loud?
That was that loud.
What was Hulk Hogan like outside the ring? Did he have an ego, or is he one of the boys?
He seemed more like one of the boys outside of the ring with me. Soft spoken, quiet, hillbilly. What's going on? And, he was attentive, and I got to say this: Hulk Hogan was wonderful for me to begin with, because they brushed me up against him, and man, you couldn't get brushed up against anybody any better.
Got a big rub.
Yeah, it was a big rub. I mean, they just put me like, boom, go ahead, Hillbilly. And had I not had that knee injury when I did, I would have probably been a lot more successful. He and I, because we were starting to do tag team matches together and stuff. And as a matter of fact, that's how I blew my knee out in San Diego, California, working with him and Johnny Valiant and me and Brutus Beefcake.
Yeah, you were chasing Johnny, I think, around the ring, and he tripped.
No, that deal was in the San Diego Sports Arena. Valiant had jumped up on the apron and was grabbing Hogan by the leg, and I was standing down there. I was standing down on the ground.
Right.
And they did a deal where Beefcake was going to go off the ropes and come and give Hogan a smash, like a shoulder block.
Right.
But Hogan moves out of the way, and when he does, the deal was he hits Johnny Valiant. Johnny Valiant jumps off there, and I'm to catch him. But Johnny, I had my knee for Johnny's boot kicked me right here at that patella tendon. Knocked my patella tendon right up here.
Oh,
it was horrible.
Yeah,
I tore my patella tendon away from the bone, a left rectinalum, a right rectinalum, all in one shot. Done. And that was it. I was just taking off really good. I think Hogan and I were going to do a lot of things around the country.
Yeah.
Good. We could have got that thing worked up, and we've been in the garden with it, and we could have been all over, a couple pay-per-views with it, but I had to go to the hospital and get fixed. Mm-hmm. So, but Hogan, let me back to Hogan. Hogan was always fantastic to me, and Terry's always been real nice to me. And a lot of the things that I've seen about him, I've seen through secondhand, through the TV or through the media, or I get a second report from somebody. And for better and for worse, he's always been good to me. Now, I wish things had turned out better for him. I do, because now I know he's had a couple of surgeries. He had a couple of hips replaced, I think.
Right.
And knees and things, and I just wish, I wish him well. I wish things would have been better, but man, I never will forget it. I'm always indebted to him for how nice he was to me. Don't necessarily mean I agree with some of the other moves the brother made, but that's the brother. He does what he does, and listen, who am I to tell him? Come on, I can't tell him. He's still doing what he's doing. To me, I would have been bye-bye a long time ago.
Yeah.
And happily ever after a long time ago. But that's just the way I'm wound. Some other people, once they get that show business bug, and the biggest word in the universe is what? Ego. Anybody can say what they want to, but of course he has a tremendous ego. You have to have a tremendous ego to do that at that level he has. Anyone that performs, even if you're just a business guy that that does big business, merges with other businesses, you got to have that whole ego, testosterone thing going. And that's what Terry's got. I keep up with him a lot, through Jimmy Hart and people like that, but I wish him well. I'd like to talk to him more, but proximity-wise, I wasn't around him very much. And to be honest with you, those kind of guys live a kind of lifestyle that I just don't want to deal. I don't want to party all the time. For what? I get up every day. I try to do the same thing. I got my Sirius. I know I'm jumping ahead. I got my Sirius XM radio show that I do. It's called Hillbilly Jim's Moonshine Matinee. It's a 4-hour show in outlaw country. I've been doing 8 years now. It's an international show. I do that once or twice a week in Nashville. The rest of the time, my day consists of me getting up doing whatever I want to do, which means I go to the gym. I work out an hour and a half. I do an hour's worth of aerobic stuff and 30 minutes worth of weights. And I come home, do my thing, stretch a little bit more, eat and I go back out and walk another hour at night. And that's just exactly what works for me. That's why, I don't want to be one of those guys that they say, oh, that Hillbilly Jim. And especially if you look in the mirror and you're the guy that done it.
Yeah.
Now, if you have an accident, brother, it's an accident. Or if it's by right of birth, you can't do anything about that. But most of the stuff that happens to most people is self-induced.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And I just don't want to do that. I want to enjoy every day and try. And that don't include. I mean, I've seen these guys. Believe me, I've seen it, and we've seen all these fable guys. All these guys that have all this money, make the money, and they wind up zero. Now let me ask you something. Wouldn't you have been better off to not never had that money and lost it than to have had it and lost it and have to live with the reality that I blew it? I don't want to be like that. I mean, that's just me. Back to what Jay Strongbow said, ain't how much you make, how much you save, how much you keep.
Hogan, Hogan was a big player there, all the way up until the very end. Had Hogan changed at all, personally, professionally, since the years earlier where you worked with him?
You know what? I can't really say. No, he hadn't changed because he was always really good to me. And our matches were always real easy. It wasn't wasn't pulling teeth. He wouldn't, so no, he didn't change towards me.
Yeah. Have you ever watched Hogan Knows Best?
I've seen a little bit of it.
What do you think?
My opinion, I think, is bad for him.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, and I'll give you a good example. One of the things that exposes him is an old man. He walks around old, looks old, talks old,
right.
Talks all about his bad points. Then, they were in Memphis just a month ago.
Yep.
And here it is. They were on every radio station, every live television station, everything. He was talking about how now he's got a new viewing audience from VH1, Hogan Knows Best, and they barely did 2,000 people in a 25,000 seat arena.
Yeah, it's been the talk of business for a couple of weeks. Yeah,
it was really horrible. But they picked, I think what they should have done is stuck what they were supposed to have done. And that was work the angle, which is not really an angle, but it was supposed to be the last wrestling show at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have pulled in some of the people at the place they went to. It cost $10 to park.
Wow.
And then it was so much to get in, and it wasn't well done. They did no promotional stuff till the day or a few days before the show.
Did they contact you at all to do anything on the show?
They asked me about it. I told them I wasn't interested unless I was main event.
Yeah.
And then at the Coliseum, and then then they moved it to the Forum, FedEx Forum, and of course Vince said anybody who works for that show will never work for me, and that's where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wasn't interested.
Early impressions of Hogan. What was Hogan like in the locker room as a leader, or was he? Some people say he wasn't a leader; he was a loner.
He was a loner. He had to be a loner.
Right.
He couldn't. It was hard for him to enjoy much of anything because he always had to watch his back. We unfortunately didn't get to wrestle each other but twice, and for the simple fact that he was going to mess up their marketing. Because when I went out and DDT'd his ass, people started chanting DDT instead of Hulk, 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 and it really screwed things up for me. as Vince put it, I have the worst luck of all.
What are your memories and thoughts on Hogan?
Terry's good people. You know, he's always listening to the guys. He's always, you know, trying to do what he can to help the guys if he could. You know, a lot of guys depended on him and took him way too much for what he was able to do. But he was still hanging in there with you and do what he could for you. You know, as long as you were all right with him, he was okay. He was all right with everybody.
Why do you think you never had a major pay-per-view or TV run against him?
Well, because I don't think I wasn't serious enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, what I mean is when I say I wasn't serious enough, because I really didn't give a shit.
Right.
I was doing good. I was doing all right on the WrestleMania sold-out crowd of Koko B Ware.
WrestleMania 3.
Yeah, and then I was doing all right with Tito. Yeah, I did all right with done very well with my man Billy Graham.
Right.
Superstar.
I was going to ask you about
hell of a deal.
Before you started your series with Hogan, it took about a year for that to happen. And I heard that Vince didn't fully trust you yet, or
I don't know if it was Vince anymore than probably could have been Hogan too.
Right.
Back while all this was happening in the early 80s, they were in Kansas City one day, and I had a show running in Municipal Hour Memorial Hall across the river from them. And the longer I thought about this, the more it ticked me off, so I drove over there. And of course I could get in the building, you know, every place would be like someone that was very well known around here coming to one of the events here. They don't have a problem getting in. So I walked up into the dressing room area, and it was like this death silence fell over it. And Terry was standing there talking to the two Funks sitting in the background. And they're looking at me like, oh my God, what's he here for? And I open hand slapped Hogan, and not in the face, in the rib cage. It really stings if you get hit right hard in the rib cage.
Right.
He said a couple of words and he spun around and he saw who it was and he just fell back into a chair. And by then Gorilla Monsoon had run in and a whole bunch of people. And Hogan said, I thought the first time I saw you, you'd have a machine gun or a Tommy gun. I said, no. Well, I have one though, but it's not that big.
Right.
So I don't, you know, who knows from.
What was the heat stemming from again?
Me losing $750,000 in the Midwest.
Right. How did that involve Hogan?
Hogan was the head honcho for Vince at that time. And he was in Kansas City working my city, or, you know, theoretically, everybody had their own places.
Right.
They just tried to take over the territory.
Yeah.
What are your memories of the the Slammies with the brawl with Jim Duggan? I remember watching that, and that stuck in my mind.
That went on for 45 minutes.
Right.
And then we came through the curtain about 4 or 5 minutes too soon. But it was a fun thing to do. There's a couple of scenes they didn't show. One where the chickens were there and they wanted me to kill this chicken, so I grabbed it and pulled its head off. And the blood went which direction.
Right.
That was all kind of edited out, but right now they probably show it. I was there, I guess, 2.5 years, something like that, when I was wrestling Hogan in Nashville, Tennessee. And one of the dumbest things that I've ever done in my life was allow NBC to put that table around for me to go through. No one had ever went through a table before me. No one had ever stood someone straight up in the air in a stand-up suplex or a double arm or whatever. there's a lot of things that I brought into the wrestling, including a lot of this stuff now they call hardcore. I dove through that table Hogan had moved, and it had a 5-inch steel band around it. So the table went this way. The board part of it broke. The steel didn't.
Right.
So when I pushed to get up, it recoiled and hit me in the low abdomen. And if you don't see that you're hurt, you don't really pay that much attention to it. So about a month later at WrestleMania 4 at Trump Plaza, when I finished that night, I knew there was definitely something wrong with me. I flew back to Kansas City, called my doctor the next morning, and after that I went through 7 abdominal surgeries. But at that point, I knew I was done then.
Going back to the 80s, when you finally went to the World Wrestling Federation, did you go in thinking it was going to be your final run?
Yeah, primarily. When I went up with Vince, I walked away from a $750,000 investment that it totally went sour. It was either do that and know that I had a few years there trying to recoup some of that, or stay there and tolerate the Crockett, Gagne, that whole thing that had started to, they were trying to form their own little group in the Midwest. And Vince had already taken 90% of the television that we were on back then. He's been a very fortunate person to be able to use the antitrust laws in reverse.
Right.
Here's the guy saying, here's 29 different promoters trying to keep me from promoting wrestling, when there's one promoter trying to put everybody out of business.
Hulk got a call from Vern Gagne, it's like late 81, 82.
Right.
And so then Hulk called me and said, hey, we got gonna get a heck of a breakup here, and it's gonna be a big deal. And so what I did, I flew back to Florida, and we packed up a bunch of stuff, and I actually drove his car to Minneapolis from Tampa.
Right.
And then he flew in, and the moving truck came up, and we got a place right behind the airport over there, right in Bloomington, Minnesota. I had a big apartment, and worked out of there for a while, and I went back to Japan a couple more times, and worked there for a little while, and then wound up pissing off Greg Gagne. For what, I don't know. I think he was jealous basically because Hulk and I had a relationship, and then Hulk wasn't hang out with him and stuff, and didn't want to hang out at the office because Greg wanted to manipulate, and he wanted to capitalize on Hulk's time, and as long as if I was around, then Hulk and I were training, and we're doing our own thing as we always had. So I think they kind of cut my throat there. I kind of cut my own throat there, with Greg and those guys, and they kind of pushed me out.
What are your early memories of Hulk Hogan from the territory in AWA?
Just that he came in, and I was already there as a heel, so Vern was the one that made Hulk a babyface, because Hulk had always been a heel up to that point. And so it was Vern that, because he had me on one side, he couldn't have two of us, I guess. So Vern came up with the idea to make Hulk the babyface. It was good timing, because when the Rocky movie came out, it would be hard for Hogan to have been pushed that hard with the movie role had he been a heel. It was much easier to push him as a babyface with the Rocky movie.
Easy to work with in the ring?
Yeah, he dislocated my jaw one night, though, in Eau Claire. Yeah. By a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the one where you're doing the test of strength, and usually when he gets me, I'll kick him and get him down again.
Right.
And then in the end, they reverse it. Well, he kicked too soon and reversed too soon. He kicked me right in the point of the jaw, and he dislocated my jaw, and he knew it. And so we had to go another 15 minutes, and I got a dislocated jaw, and he was wonderful. I beat the crap out of him. He didn't do a thing to me.
Right.
And I had to go immediately to the hospital in Eau Claire, Wisconsin when the match was over and have the doctor yank my jaw back in place. And that wasn't a pleasant moment. But I didn't blame Hulk for that. It's just an accident that happened. He certainly didn't do it intentionally.
What are your memories of when Hulk Hogan came through the territory for a brief period of time?
My memory is that Jerry Jarrett and I co-signed for Hulk's first car, and we never got reimbursed when he skipped out on his own territory. And Hulk, you know, he made all this big money. You could at least pay us back for that car. I remember when Hulk first came in. You know, I can't remember if he came to us from Florida or if he. I believe he did, and then went from us up to Vern, and then of course Vern to Vince. But he was one of those guys that when you saw him, you knew that he was gonna be something special, just because he had such a unique look, and the voice, and at this time he was really just becoming the Hulk, you know. And I think we kind of helped shape and mold him along that road by doing some, you know, we were one of the first companies that sort of innovated the wrestling vignettes or the music videos and that sort of thing to help get guys over. We always felt that you could do more than just have somebody beat somebody in the ring to help them get over with the people. And we did some really entertaining and great little videos on the Hulk. And you know, at the time he was there, Memphis was a great place to work. I mean, you get a lot of work there, but it was not ever a place that you were going to make a lot of money at that time. And you had to really want to be there and want to you know, improve your skill or whatever, and know that that's what you're going to get to do there, because you certainly weren't going to get rich there. There just weren't. There were a lot of wrestlers there. The payoffs were spread thin, and you know, even though we wrestle every night, the houses were at a lot of times not all that big, and so the payoffs were not that great. And I think that that Hulk realized after he was there for a while that he just didn't think he was making enough money, and was going to try to go on somewhere where he could make more money. And then of course he went on up for Vern Gagne, and then came back through after he was the Hulk, and he and I had some pretty memorable matches then, and you know, I like to think that I think that he would say that he probably learned a little bit working with me. We had some pretty good matches, and you know, a lot of people knock Terry, but I can't knock the guy. He's probably the best self-promoter that has ever come along in this business, and that's what you have to be in this business to be successful. And nobody's done it any better than him, and he made a lot of money for himself, made a lot of money for other companies, and really helped bring a lot of attention to this business. So you know, all I can say is more power to him.
Hulk Hogan and Ken Patera in the AWA. Hulk got to the point after about a month. Well, I think we wrestled like 20 times a month. So Hulk came to me. He says, "Kenny," he says, instead of saying headlock, rope, drop down, arm drag, leapfrog, we'll just call the numbers. 1 will be throw off, 2 leapfrog, 3 turnbuckle, 4 clothesline, 5 full Nelson, so on and so forth. So we had 1 through 10. I have pretty big hands for a little fat fuck.
Let me just switch tapes while we're. Hold on, switch tapes.
Can I pick my nose?
You can do whatever you want.
There's no boogers.
That's good.
No boogers. I was picking my nose on the airplane. I picked out a gray fucking hair, and I said, "Fuck."
I'm getting old. You gotta.
Am I that fucking old? Fucking pick a gray out of your nose. What the fuck? Hey, what did you say?
Hulk Hogan and his number system calling in the ring.
Oh God, yeah. After wrestling with Hulk for about a month, maybe 6 weeks in the AWA, I was out of Minneapolis at the time. Am I a good-looking motherfucker? Hey, 64, going on 65. 65's approaching quickly. That's all right. Yeah, you know, the older I get, the better I feel.
That's good.
I really, and a lot of people I talk to, some friends of mine, they're a little, a few years older, 67, 60, and they said, God, I feel like shit. I said, because you have a bad attitude, you fucking prick. You fucking asshole.
Right.
That's why you feel shitty. Yeah, but anyway,
the Hulkster.
The Hulkster said, at about 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever. Can't we do the same routine every night? It's a different town, but still, he said, why don't we do a number system? 1 for headlock, 2 for, throw you off, drop down, 3 arm drag, 4, turnbuckle, 5 full Nelson, 6 duck, run you in the turnbuckle, hit the turnbuckle, drop back. I drop an elbow, number 7, you roll out, I come up selling the elbow, you give me a clothesline, number 8, and so on. So we had a number system, 1 through 10. We went on for like 6 months like that. It worked out perfect. Never called headlock, drop down, arm drag, leapfrog, The fucking number system. Hey, we're the first digital wrestlers. Hulk Hogan, you never thought of that. You and Ken Patera, we were the first digital wrestlers.
Wow.
How
did Hogan
have a beer? I wish I had a Miller Lite. I don't know about this Coors Light. This is, I graduated from Brigham Young University. It's right on my watch there. This is my watch from my graduation. Thank you. But I did graduate from college.
Good.
A lot of people think that I didn't, but I did. I have a graduation card in my wallet. But anyway, when I was at Brigham Young, we used to call Coors Light Rocky Mountain Goat Piss.
Yeah, there you go.
Rocky Mountain Goat Piss. And in Provo, now, I was at Mormon college, Brigham Young, no drink, no smoke, no nookie, But anyway, we used to drink Olympia beer. Olympia beer was in Olympia, Washington, of course. But anyway, Am I getting off the track? Go ahead.
We were just talking about Hogan. Did you realize he was going to be a big superstar later on down the line? Did you see it in him?
Yeah.
And did his personality change? I mean, from the AWA to WWF, when he was making the money and he was on TV on top of the, pretty much the top baby face of the company. Did you see him change personality-wise as getting a big head? Or was he still one of the boys?
No, absolutely not. No, Hulk never changed. The money changed.
Right.
The money changed, but no. This is a business. We don't have a union, and fuck the union. Fuck General Motors, fuck Ford, and fuck all these other assholes. These fucking Democrats want the union in, you fucking moron, cocksuckers that think the union is your ass. The union is destroying your fucking life. If you are in a union, your union is destroying your life. Have the fucking balls to get off your lazy fucking ass and go get a fucking job and fucking be responsible for your own fucking self. Don't rely on a piece of shit union to kiss your ass, give you your benefits, do this, do that, do that. If you're that lazy, you don't deserve to even have the fucking job, you piece of shit.
We would go to the building early, and there'll be nobody there but a big old wrestling ring. They didn't even open the doors yet, and then the ring crew would set up the ring, and I would just look around and jump inside the ring and sort of, bounce. I wanted to know how it felt in there, and then my uncle seen the interested in me. Alpa and Sika seen the interested in me, and we started going to the buildings early, and they started to train me, and that's how I ended up, become. That was my training. My training camps, going early to the show. But I traveled with them. That's where I met Hogan.
Because he was down there, right?
Yeah, I met Hogan and Terry these times. Brutus the Barbecue Beefcake. Who else? I could say Piper. A lot of big names. Paul Orndorff, one of my other greatest wrestlers that I've liked. Yeah, he taught me a lot. Gave me some good word of wisdom as growing up as a kid. Big Catterny Lad. There's a lot of big names that came from that federation. Bill, I think it was run by Bill Watts at the time. After Florida, they traveled to Louisiana.
Oh, you went with them there?
I went with them to Louisiana too. So I was 16. I was young, and I didn't finish high school. I didn't graduate it, so I had nothing to lose. I had nothing to lose and nothing to turn back to. I figured, well, this is it. It's like filling out an application. You sit there and you wait your turn, and that's pretty much where I ended up at.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
When you broke into, also New York was known for a big man's territory. Were you intimidated at all by that? As far as look at Hulk Hogan, the size and all that, or did?
No, because the person that I am, and some people would take it as stuck up, cocky. I really don't. Maybe it's a little cocky, but it's about knowing who and what you are. And the struggles you went through in your life. These people don't know me. They don't know about, how hard I had to struggle to, just stay alive in life, and without getting into detail. And so as far as height-wise, there's a ton of guys that were bigger than me. Good looking, they couldn't touch me. My body, bar none. There was nobody had a body better than mine in wrestling. My ability only got better. Because I wasn't this monster, I did things other people couldn't do, like walk up the ropes, walk up backwards, do this high flying, drop kick higher than anybody, so I worked on my special attributes. So intimidated? Absolutely not.
Hulk Hogan, was he one of the boys, or did he keep to himself and have an ego?
Everybody, I think, has an ego, whether they recognize it or not. In the beginning, I thought Hogan was an all right guy. I travel with them, jump in the limo with them. Hey, Paul, let's go to the gym, and he go do his thing, I go do mine. And but times change, man. When you start to go down, that's when the ego starts to kick in, I think, a lot harder.
Was there a lot of pressure on you early on? Did you feel pressure?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you deal with it?
Ground it out. You just grind it. It's you don't really understand. You don't have a grasp on the pressure. When I first walked into TV for the first time, I looked at Hogan and I said to the guy that I went up there with, I said, "Who's that?" And he looked at me and said, "You're shitting me, right?" And I said, "No, dude." I said, "Who the fuck is that?" He goes, "That's Hulk Hogan." I'm like, "Okay, so what the fuck does that mean to me?" And he's like, "Oh, that's, I'm like, "Okay." It was what it was, I didn't know what the guy was. I didn't follow wrestling. I didn't know. I knew of Bruno Sammartino, and who didn't? He's a legend,
Right.
But as far as anything else, didn't know.
You and Hulk Hogan have a great history from before the WWF. Do you remember when you guys first met?
Hogan?
Yeah.
I think it was the 84 run that I had in New York after I finally had the dog collar match with Piper, 83. That was the end of 83. In 84, I went to New York. And that's when I met Hogan. And we just liked each other. And he said, I met him a couple times when I was wrestling in Florida, when he was still playing the guitar at a band. I met him there. So we always... He's a mellow guy, and he likes to smoke the weed, and he don't like getting drunk and crazy and all that. Just a real nice guy, Florida boy, down to earth, So I got along with that type. And my wife, Julie, who I'm still married to now, my wife, beautiful wife, Julie, and Linda became really good friends. So then we ended up moving to Florida, and everybody he had his parties once a month with all the guys. It seemed like everybody migrated to Florida back then because it was easy to get to New York or wherever. It had a great airport, but you could be in New York in 2 hours and wrestle. I used to fly home and wrestle in the Garden and get a midnight flight home back to Tampa, back when we had People's Express. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They had midnight and 1 o'clock flights to Tampa. Wow, and they were empty, but they ended up filling them up coming back, I'm sure. But it was fun being able to get out, you know. But I consider him one of my best friends in the business. And there's Tito Santana and there's Ronnie Garvin and both the Bulldogs if they were still alive. And Brutus, Brutus is a brother, and we always got along. So
You're such an integral part of the beginning of the Hulkamania era too, because I remember the one from the Spectrum. That was even on one of the best of Hulk Hogan tapes years later that they showed. It didn't seem to follow the same formula.
I watched that just the other day. I forgot all about it and was on YouTube. So I just watched it. And it went 25 minutes and he was up, down, he sold. It was like it wasn't his typical match. Because usually he just beats the guys up and boom. But for me, we had a real competitive match. Even though I'm smaller than him, I stuck up to him. It's not about being big, The best weight and the best size to be as a wrestler, I was 6 foot or 6'1", and around 240, 250 pounds. That way I can wrestle small guys, or I can wrestle big guys like Hogan or Andre. That was the weight. That was the ideal weight and size to be, so you could work with everybody.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
I want to talk about the 80s and some of the talent raids that went on with the AWA, starting with Hulk Hogan. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot written and said about the WWF talent raids. What was your father's side of the story when Hulk took Vince's offer?
Here's how it went down, okay? Hogan was booked, and my father had called Vince Sr. We had our battle royals I was telling you about in the fall. And we're in St. Paul, and Andre and Hogan bumped into each other, their backs, and there was only maybe 4, 5, 6 guys left. And they both turned slowly, and those people just went, whoo. And my dad said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And he sat Hogan down. He called Vince Sr. He said, I want Andre for February. So we had Andre for February. This was of, 82 or 83, whenever it all started there. And he said, Hulk, here's what we're going to do. When you come back, we've got Christmas week. We have St. Paul, San Francisco, Chicago, Milwaukee, one of other major cities. We had 6 cities. They're all sold out. And we were in 6-man tag team matches. We're going to end up booking you and Andre in February with the winner to get a shot at the title. We're going to run that in all the cities. And Hogan was right there, and Andre was in Phoenix with us. Our last night was Phoenix. And Andre was a little hard to work with that night. He was a little belligerent and drinking, and he wouldn't talk to people. And we go, well, what's wrong with him? My dad said, he went up to him, big man, what's the matter? Get away from me. And that's the first time he'd ever said that to Vern. What's wrong with the guy? Hogan then went to Japan. And then it was about the 18th or 19th of December, we got a telegram from Tampa, Florida, that Hogan wasn't coming back. And my dad thought him and Eddie Graham used to pull jokes on each other.
Right.
And Eddie had been on a hunting trip with my dad where he couldn't find them up in Alaska or up in the Arctic where they were hunting, and hired a helicopter and everything. He thought it was a rib. He went back to Tampa. So my dad thought, Eddie's getting me back. So he just threw it away. All of a sudden, Christmas night, Hogan doesn't show up in St. Paul. And I called Hulk. I said, hey, what are you doing? Well, I sent the telegram. I said, oh, my dad didn't think it was, he thought it was from Eddie Graham. Thought you were just thinking around. No, I'm done. I said, well, hey, fulfill your commitment. You got we got 6 nights here. Just fulfill that and then go. And he said, no, I got a commitment with Vince McMahon and I'm not going to do it.
Did he have any contract at the time with your father, or was it just a handshake deal? Okay.
Yeah. Nobody had contracts in those days. It was all a handshake, you know. And if your handshake and your word weren't good, like I said, you weren't any good.
Was it true that they were fighting over T-shirt money and maybe like a percentage of Japanese bookings? Did you?
No. The biggest thing was Hogan wanted to be the champion, and they had a match that one I told you about in St. Paul, and he didn't win the championship that night, and he was kind of pouting about that. But Nick had a commitment with Bubba as the champion, so he couldn't do anything with it then, because Hogan had an agreement with Inoki. He had been going to Inoki.
Yeah.
So we couldn't switch any titles or anything at that time. But he didn't tell that to Hogan. He just said, no, it's not right. I can't do it. So then that kind of pissed Hogan off a little bit. What the whole strategy was, we were going for that big one we're going to take him and Andre around all the major cities, then Hogan and Bockwinkel, and that's when he would get the title. But Vern never told anybody what he was doing ahead of time, because then it got in the reg sheets and everything else. So he was a big, kayfabe that way.
Right.
Everything was kept tight.
What are your memories of the bloodbath in St. Paul with Hogan and Schultz?
I don't remember it that much. Schultz was an oddball too. It drew money, and it would have drawn a lot, but Schultz was a little tough to do business with, I think.
Now, after Hogan left, the big story, and everybody knows about it, was that your father allegedly called the Iron Sheik and offered to pay him to break Hogan's leg.
Never.
No truth
Never.
behind that at all?
Yeah, I'd like to see Khosrow. Khosrow started that thing. No way.
Okay.
No way. That never happened ever.
We've done a lot of interviews with a lot of different guys, including Mean Gene and a lot of other talents. A lot of people talk about the story with Vince and your father with the phone call, offering to buy AWA for $1 million.
It wasn't a phone call. Actually, it wasn't $1 million. There was nothing like that.
Okay.
Vince came in the spring of '82. I believe that, if my date's right. I know he came in the spring, and he talked to my father. I was there with him about wanting to buy us out. He said, I've got a plan, and I'd like to buy you out. And Vern said, well, Vince, here's my problem. I've got partners in Chicago. I got a partner in Denver. I got partners in Winnipeg. I got a partner here, and I got a partner in Milwaukee and Green Bay. I have to meet with them and see what they want to do. So we talked for a couple hours, and I said, I see, why you would want it, so then you can expand your television market and you can sell your ads nationally when you have a national program. And he said, give me till August. So Vince came back in August, and Vern threw a number at him, and he said, let me think about it. The number wasn't $1 million. It was a lot more than that. And it was worth more than $1 million.
Right.
Believe me. I mean, it was major cities. It was the St. Louis TV. It was Chicago, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Winnipeg, Omaha, all the Dakotas, Denver, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, Las Vegas, San Francisco. That's major markets. And we were on TSN throughout Canada. We were in Toronto and Vancouver, along with Winnipeg. And so he gave him the number, and Vince said, okay, let me think about it. We talked for a couple hours. We drove Vince to the airport. He got out of the car, and as he's walking away, he turns around and he says, I don't negotiate. And he turns around and walks away. My dad said, what? What did he say? He said, I don't negotiate. What does he mean by that? I don't know. We never heard from him again until, that was August, till December when the big move came.
How did your father take that big move?
Oh, he was pissed. I mean, if Hogan would have made his shots and then left, wouldn't have had a problem with it at all. And that's what I told Hulk. And I told Hulk that night, I said, well, why didn't you say something to us? Why wouldn't you? We were in Phoenix together. Well, Andre got on a plane with me, and he convinced me on the way over to Japan, and then apparently McMahon came over there. And I said, well, Terry, why wouldn't you talk about it? Because there was a big future here for you. And I knew I was going to eventually take it over. And I told him, and I convinced my dad to give him a piece of the business. He's, Vern, you have to earn it.
Right.
I said, well, okay, but that's what I would recommend. And that's what we were going to do. And I told him, he said, why didn't you tell me sooner? I said, why didn't you talk to us sooner? I mean, why would you do that?
Have you guys ever had a chance to really talk about it after the fact, over the years?
Hulk?
Yeah, you and Hulk.
Well, I got him into Turner Broadcasting, no matter what Ric Flair says. I was the one that got him there. And we never really talked about it because there was no need to.
Past is the past.
Yeah.
Okay.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Thoughts on Hulk as a person and a performer? Obviously,
Great.
you were close to him.
Great person. Hogan, I don't have a bad word to say about Hogan. Always a great person. Always proud to be with him. Love to walk into places with him. And I stood at his house. His wife made us meals, sent us with coolers out of the house. And he's a unique individual, man. He was a great guy. I just love Hogan. Everything about him. He was like a cartoon character. He was like larger than life. He was on the front cover of the Sports Illustrated, the most recognizable sports entertainer in the world.
Why do you think he took off as such a massive superstar?
I think it was his look, and that Rocky movie helped him.
I got nothing but respect for Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Now, what a lot of people like Ric Flair don't understand, and even Hulk Hogan, little African-American kids, not that I was a kid, but there's a lot of them, looked up to those guys also. They may not have known it, but African-Americans looked up to them too. You got to realize, we also looked up to Leave It to Beaver and all these fucking shows when we were kids too, because that's all that's on. And if you see the top guys in the wrestling business that are all white guys getting over doing it, that's all that's on. So we admire them too.
Mm-hmm.
They might not know it, but we do. That's why so many people, African Americans, was disappointed when they heard about the Hogan thing.
Right. Which again takes us back to the N-word.
Right.
And that whole Gawker situation.
Right.
I mean, what do you make of all that?
Hey, it is what it is, man. Hey, man, I don't get in fucking people business, as you well see.
Right.
When Hogan, hey, that's their business. My name is Bennett, and I ain't in it.
Yeah.
Get out of it at your own will. I don't really have a comment on it.
Yeah.
That's y'all shit.
But do you think Hogan can come back from doing something like that? Or do you think that's always going to follow him around kind of like a scarlet letter where he's painted with that and that's it?
You might be right. I don't know. I went on the Stephen A. Smith show, and he asked me that same thing. And I told him, Hulk Hogan put me and my brother in a position to do what we did. We got a push because of Hulk Hogan. And I'll never forget that. And I will always be indebted to him for that. That does not mean I respect what he did or respect what he, where he is now. I don't know where his mind is. And that's what I was telling Stephen A. Smith. Some people can be a drunk, a junkie, and get up every day, and you'll never know it. So you don't think a person can be a just deep embedded racist and not live his day from day to day, live his life from day to day? Yes, they can do that. I don't know what Hulk Hogan's heart is, but I don't bear any ill will toward Hulk Hogan. That's what he felt at that time. He's never treated me like that. But I'm not saying I'm going to forget what I heard.
Right.
If a man apologized and he really is sincere about his apology, I will forgive him. That don't mean I forget. Me and Hogan has always been cool. I've never had a problem with the man because people have asked me, have Hogan ever showed racist tendencies? Hogan is the blackest white dude I ever met in my life. If that makes sense.
How so?
Because he just I can tell the man has been around African Americans. You can tell when white people have been around African Americans. You can tell when certain Caucasians have been around African Americans. It's just a certain swag they got.
Yeah.
It is. And you can hear it in their voice. You know what I'm saying? And especially what they do. So that's why I say influence, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. That still don't mean a person is not bigoted or something like that. So, but if you talk to Hogan, you will see what I'm saying.
Right.
Same thing with Kevin Nash. Same thing. You could tell Kevin Nash knew everything about R&B music. He was a basketball player also.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about R&B music. When I tell you everything, I thought I knew music. Kevin Nash eat me alive. These are conversations we should have.
Yeah.
And he would bring up people. I'm like, damn, I forgot about that. I feel like, man, I let Kevin Nash know more than me. You know what I'm saying? You don't supposed to know more than me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can tell. You know what I'm saying? He's been around. Okay, he's been around a lot of brothers, so that's how you know all this. You have to listen to this music to know it. You can't just look at the top 40 every week and go, okay, blah blah blah. You have to listen to it. You know what I'm saying? That's music.
Right.
You got to know it. You got to listen to it. So I bear no ill will with Hulk Hogan. None. Hulk Hogan was always good to me. Always cool.
Was there a lot of political tension between you guys and Hogan and Bischoff being in the middle?
Yeah, because Hogan had Hogan's deal was, it was so ridiculous in his favor. They gave him a contract that
he had creative control.
Yeah, and then not only that, he got paid like a certain amount of dollars for every pay-per-view, whether it drew or not, and so he was always on top. And it was such like when I later booked, that alone, that contract killed me.
Right.
Because you couldn't get a hold of him. He'd come in at 6 o'clock, show went on at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock live, and he'd just say, he's in 5 segments, and he says, bro, it doesn't work for me. And here you are scrambling to, people think it's so easy. It's just like, man, those segments are timed, and, so you've got to come up, and then you've got to get guys to fill those spots. And
how much tension did that cause between you and Hawk?
None, because that was his deal.
Right.
He was smart enough to have that deal. That's not between Terry and I. That's between whoever signed the papers.
Right.
God bless him. I've always said that. God bless anybody that can get more money than me, get my spot. God bless you. Go for it. Because I'm not going to sit and let you.
Right.
So if you're better than I am, you're smarter than I am, and you're better at this game than I am, then God bless you. But
it's good philosophy.
Yeah, I haven't seen many guys that get over me. Get over on me.
Was there a lot of struggling between you, Scott, and Hogan for power and creative control at all, or was it?
We didn't have. There was no chance for us to get creative control.
Okay.
I know that we knew that we had the cool factor, like we were hip, and he just wasn't hip.
Right.
So it was like, either we could smarten him up to pop culture, and then he could smarten us up to how to get more money. It was like it became almost a synergy there that because we got several big raises during the time of this. Like we found out how much he was really making one night when we were all fucked up, and it was just like, what? You're making that? Well. Then we went into Bischoff and said, we're going to quit unless you bump our pay up.
Wow.
So
how did that work out for you guys?
We got that was that big $6.5 million contract we got or whatever.
Do you think Hogan used you guys at all, or do you guys feel that you ever used him?
I would hope so.
Right.
We'd be the only ones in the business that he didn't.
Right.
Yeah, that's just kind of the way it works.
Nature of the business.
Yeah. I know I used him big time, and when he walked down that aisle and joined us.
Right.
That was when you went to NAPTI and all those other places. If you were standing next to Hogan with the same shirt he had on, you were, whether they knew you or not, they knew who the hell he was. If there's anybody with a higher Q rating than Hogan.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Now, when you came in there, did they already kind of have the idea floating around about an NWO type of gimmick, or did
See, and what happened so cool and it happened by accident was Kev's contract expired a week after mine, just because that's the way he came in. It wasn't structured that way or anything. That's just the way it happened. So which made it so cool for the angle down there.
Yeah.
Because I finished for Vince on a Sunday night in Madison Square Garden, and I was on Nitro the next day. And it was Larry Zbyszko's idea to have me come through the audience and interrupt a match that's in progress.
Wow.
And not hit the ring and beat the guys up. Just walk in and grab the mic like you would if, the boys know me. They ain't going to beat me up. They're not supposed to. They're having a match. I just grab the mic and go, hey, and I start talking. And they just stopped wrestling. And people were, what? And it was so cool, and it was all Zbyszko's idea, because Bischoff would have had me walk down the aisle. I came through the crowd, talked, did what Eric told me to do. Later, I told him I had a surprise for him next week. That's when Kev came. And the whole reason it worked was because people thought Vince sent us down there. People thought we still worked for Vince. That's why it worked.
Wow. Now, was Hogan originally going to be a part of the group, or how did that all come about?
Well, in Hulk's contract, he has creative control over his character. That means he doesn't have to do anything that he doesn't want to do, which is a cool thing to have. I didn't have it, but Hulk had it, and he deserved it. So we're at the Bash at the Beach in Daytona, and the show has already started. The pay-per-view's already started. Hulk is flying on a private jet from Cali to Daytona. So he's in the air. We can't get contact with him on the phone. We're not sure that he's going to do it, because he's invested a lot of years into being a hero, being a good guy. We're not sure he wants to be a villain. He may not want to. But when he gets there, having seen the success that Kev and I are having coming in, Hulk's smart. And his career as a babyface was starting to decline a little bit then. And he recognized it, and he was smart enough to go, the only thing to do is turn. And it was the perfect time. And plus, see, we were New York guys, me and Kev. And we just, as far as the people knew, we worked for Vince.
Yeah.
And there's no more identifiable New York guy than Hulk. So it was like, holy, Vince sent those guys. We know Hulk and Vince from way back. Those fuckers are going to take over Atlanta. That was the storyline. And it was Eric's idea. And Hulk agreed to do it. And it was Kev's finish that we did that night. And it worked.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
So as we started creeping closer to breaking even, I don't remember what year it was, but 94, 95. It was the first year I remember we were about to make money. It was about the same time that I went to Ted through Bill Shaw and wanted to bring in Hulk Hogan. We were close enough and had enough success. By then, the Disney thing was actually working on a commercial level. The wrestling fans didn't really like it, but from a business perspective, it was starting to work. We were starting to contain our costs. We were eliminating a lot of the human resource issues that were so prevalent earlier. Then they started giving me a little more rope. So I wanted to bring in Hulk Hogan. And again, you have to just look at the timing of all of that. It was kind of like dominoes in a way. As we shored up all of our losses, started managing the company properly, brought in Hulk Hogan, which was a big risk, but everybody believed in it at the time.
I was going to ask you, what was your reaction to that?
It was pretty positive.
Okay.
It was positive. It was not a tough sell from a Ted perspective.
And I do have a question about that, but go ahead.
Brought in Hulk. Now people started really believing in it. So they started giving me a little bit more rope. Well, now they gave me the money to bring in Gene. Then they gave me the money to bring in Bobby. And with each one of those acquisitions, the ratings started getting bigger, the pay-per-views started growing, the arenas started filling up again. So of course my budget started getting bigger. But it was a slow process. It wasn't like this golden ATM card.
When you first negotiated with Hulk, were you worried he was going to take the offer and use it as leverage to get back to WWE?
No, I wasn't concerned whether he was leveraging me or not. I didn't believe he would. I keep saying this, but you go back and look at the context of that time. There was a lot of bad blood between him and Vince McMahon at that time. And a lot of it was very, very public. A lot of the animosity between Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan at that time was very, very public. I didn't really think there was any chance that he was leveraging me.
Okay. How long did the process of trying to get him to sign take?
I don't remember how long the process was in terms of signing Hulk Hogan. It
It was not long. It was a period of maybe a couple months, I think at the most, month and a half.
How important was Ric Flair in getting Hogan to sign? Did he help?
Ric Flair was critical. And I probably couldn't have, I don't want to say, that might be a little too strong. I doubt that I would have been able to sign Hulk Hogan without Ric Flair's help. You know, Hulk was a smart guy. Hulk knew in order for him to have the kind of impact that coming to WCW was going to have on him, he needed to be working with the right guy and somebody that he could trust and somebody, quite frankly, that would make him look good. And he knew Ric Flair. Of everybody on our roster, Ric Flair would make him look good.
First impressions of working with Hulk?
I've always had a blast working with Hulk. Has he been a challenge? Yeah. Has there been moments where he frustrated me and I don't want to say angered me, but probably frustrated me and made me work 3 times harder at something that I need to because of his, silliness and the way he did things? Of course. Have we always seen eye to eye on things? Absolutely not. But I've always sensed an honesty, even though at times I knew he was working and I know the wrestling thing and all that. But deep down inside, as a person, he's always been straight with me. He's a generous guy. He wants to be a generous guy, but he can be very insecure at times. And that insecurity is the reason for a lot of the turmoil that people probably have seen and talk about and experienced, but I've never experienced that with him.
How important was Hogan's brand name when it came to rebuilding WCW?
Hulk Hogan's brand name meant everything when it came to rebuilding WCW. And again, I try to tell people, because people forget, they look at that time, before, during, and after and kind of run it all together. But if you look at that time, where WCW was trying to overcome its regional stigma. WCW was trying to get better syndication. WCW was trying to get better advertising rates. They're trying to do all these things simultaneously. Hulk Hogan was that one brand name that superseded everything else that we were doing that got us in the door. It was critical to our success.
Were you surprised when some of the WCW markets were booing and rejecting Hogan?
The markets that were rejecting Hulk Hogan were the television audience markets. While the audience may, because of the culture of professional wrestling and the North-South, NWA, WWF kind of civil war, if you will, or not so civil war, sure, that was disappointing to a certain extent. We did anticipate it. It's not like we thought everybody was going, oh my gosh, Hulk Hogan's here. Everybody was, even myself back then, knowledgeable enough about the 2 different cultures that we knew there was going to be some resistance. And, was it disappointing? Of course it was. But on the business side, it didn't matter.
Vince has said that Hogan legitimized WCW. Would you agree?
He was instrumental in it. Yeah. I think Vince McMahon and I have both said the same thing when it comes to that. He helped us transcend the regional stigma and mile and a half number 2 position that we had been perceived to be in and were in for so long.
Hogan brought in Randy Savage into WCW. Talk about the process of Savage coming into the company and what the process was like.
Hulk, I think I remember he called me. I was going through an airport. And he called me, paged me. I think I had a pager back in those days. He paged me, said, hey, brother, I got to talk to you. So we got on the phone, and he was just adamant about bringing Randy in. And anybody that's worked with Hulk, and if you look at his career over the years, there are certain people that he likes to work with, and he tries to, like everybody does, recreate the success that he had previously in some other formula or match or scenario. And that's normal in any business. And he really wanted to bring Randy in. And at that time, I was, we were starting to get to be on a roll. I think we were profitable by that time. For some in the history of the company, we'd ever been profitable. The numbers were starting to grow. Everybody was feeling good about everything. And I remember I called Randy. I think I talked to him on the phone the very first time. Got along with him great. And the good news about Randy is that not only was Randy coming, but Slim Jim was coming with him. The Slim Jim sponsorship actually paid for Randy Savage. I got Randy Savage for free, essentially. And nobody knows that.
Right.
And it was like, oh, he's spending more money on Randy Savage. This didn't cost me a dime. And it made it really easy.
What was Randy like to work with?
I really liked Randy. I always, again, I say this, were there times when it was ultra challenging? Of course. He was an eccentric, intense, insecure, creative perfectionist. Okay, put all those things in one bucket and then step in it. Of course, there are times when it was uncomfortable. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I miss him.
Who are some of the guys that when you would, write ideas or go over the storylines would really challenge you?
Randy. Oh, really, brother? He's another guy. He was always looking for, okay, what do you really want? I know what you're saying, but what do you really want? That was constant with him. We'd always work through it, and I laugh about it now, but it took some time, took some energy.
If some of the boys wanted to maybe add a little bit of their twists onto your storyline, would you allow it?
Sure,
for the most part?
I would.
Okay.
Sure, I would.
When you heard that Hogan was coming in now, you at the time, even up to that point, as Flair was just starting to come back, you were the top dog more or less in the company. You've been their champion for a long time. You kept the door open with Sid. What was your reactions when Hogan was coming in? Because you got to know right away,
Well, when Rick double crossed me for the title,
yeah,
it was a tough, dusty job, 2 days before the pay-per-view, and I went. My first reaction was no. He said, "Well, I'm going to keep the title." I said, "No, you're not." I said, "That's not what we talked about. That's not the agreement on which And Rick, that simply ain't going to happen. And we had long, big discussion on that. And after probably 15 or 200 promises that he made, for the future, I said, okay, let's go ahead and just get out of this cage match the best way we can. And then really, I thought maybe he had stubbed his own toe there, where with Hulk coming in, Hulk wasn't going to lose, no matter what he had told Rick. They would trade off a few. I mean, he beat Rick 4 straight, and pinned him 4 straight. And that certainly didn't do Rick any good at all. So I figured, well, maybe after winning 4 straight, and then he went to his buddy, what's his name?
Savage? You mean as far as the title?
Yeah, he went Butcher the Barber.
Oh, Beefcake, Brutus Beefcake, Ed Leslie.
Yeah, in other words, he went from Flair, and then he chose his next opponent.
Yeah.
Which was the
Butcher, I guess, at the time.
Butcher, the Beefcake, whatever. And obviously the buy rate was horrible, the match was horrible, so it was like, okay, boom, Vader to the rescue, right?
Yeah.
Let's resurrect this thing. And I sat down with Eric and said, look, the guy just went 4 straight on Ric Flair. He just beat, and the best thing for Hogan, the best thing for Vader, the best thing for this company is with Flair as my manager, because Harley was hurt at that time. Flair was walking out with me as my manager. With Flair as my manager, I said, I have to go over. I said, one, you owe me one from the deal with the Stargate thing with Flair. But the best thing for the company is, I've got to go over this first time on Hogan. And I'm not talking about a clean 1, 2, 3, but I'm talking about, I don't care. Give Flair a bazooka and shoot him in the back. Somehow let me walk out of that belt and get the heat. Because, no matter how hard I walked out in the match against Hogan, and no matter how hard I tried to get the people to hate me, they were cheering me and booing Hogan at this time. It was getting to the point where it was very obvious Hogan either needed to quit or become a heel. Obviously, he eventually ended up doing it. And at one point, had told Eric, that I would have to consider, if you don't do what's right for me, if you don't want to do what's right for me, and if you don't want to do what's right for Hogan, if you don't want to do what's right for yourself, then do what's right for the company. Because then you imagine, had I went over that first match with Terry, right, and had Terry had the sense, you talk about a swerve. He kicked out of my he got up off my finish before the series. Yeah. And he told me, I was told to give it to him. He was going to lay there. Next thing I know, he got up. And,
what are you thinking at that point?
Well, I'm thinking, Jesus.
Yeah.
This is how these guys get over it. They backstab you, and I mean, I thought, what a, and I was making good for the era. I mean, I wasn't making the kind of money Hogan's making. I certainly wasn't making the kind of money Bret Hart's making. But for that time, I was making right at that 7-figure mark, and that was a lot of money for the time, and a lot of money today. But had to give a lot of thought, about that. Just saying no, look, this is the way it's going to be, or you can fire me, and I'll go up and talk to Vince.
Yeah.
And looking back on that one, that's without question, that's what should have happened, because the next 3 matches with me and Hulk would have, the kind of business we could have done, would have far surpassed what we did.
Absolutely. There were a lot of the newsletters anyway. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. We're saying that Hogan Vader is going to be a shoot because you were just pissed at that point, and you just said, "I've had it." Was there any truth to that?
No, I'm professional, and I've never gotten in the ring and intended to try to hurt anybody. I know I have hurt people, accidentally, and I know I've been hurt accidentally a lot, but no.
At the time that Hogan came, like I said, it was a completely different time in WCW than it is today. What was the locker-wide reaction to Hogan coming? Were people shaking their heads? Were people happy because business was going to be up? Or,
Well, for the most part, the people were on guaranteed contracts, so it really wasn't going to affect them in one way or the other. I mean, but I think the Hogan coming to WCW was perceived as a positive. Certainly it was going to be good for business, and the crowds were going to improve, and maybe you weren't going to make more during that contract, but if you were one of the top guys, you could certainly ask for more money the next contract. So the general perception was, yes, it was very good, and again, I just was extremely adamant about that first match. Had we been able to, I don't want to use the word talk Terry into it, because he wasn't going to be talked into nothing he didn't want to do, but had somebody had the ability to force the situation, that would have been what Hulk and I could have done in terms of business after I beat him, would have been phenomenal. We could have sold out,
absolutely,
football stadiums.
We were just talking about the Hogan series. I don't know which match in the series it was. It might have been match number 2 from Baltimore, the Baltimore pay-per-view, the one where Bruno Sammartino presented Hogan with the award, whatever. It was a really short match, and at that point, were you unmotivated at that point when you get in there, and that's all you got was 3 minutes, I think it was, with Hogan?
My memory at this point failed me. I don't really recall that. But
okay.
I will tell you this: if it was a 3-minute match, it's because Terry wanted it that way. I mean, Terry had complete control, and never in my career had I gone out to do a pay-per-view and did 3 minutes, and certainly would have not done so, unless that's what he said that he was doing, or he might have just changed his mind when he got out there.
Well, I remember it was a big story at the time. Everybody was just shocked that it would, it went, that short amount of time.
But if you're saying it happened, so I believe you. I don't recall that, but when you're in the ring with Terry and he says, "Let's go home," and if it's 3 minutes or he's in control, and so I would have had nothing to do with that. Whether he decided to do that before or during the match. So you'd have to put that one on Mr. Hogan.
Was there a lot of problems? And not trying to dissect this thing too much. As far as working with Hogan, the cage match that you did with Hogan. Apparently, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, and that's why I'm asking. The finish of the cage match was vetoed several times because he Terry Hogan didn't want to look prone to pinfall, more or less. Is there any truth to that? That the finish had when Flair came down, and originally it was rumored to be that you guys were to have left Hogan laying as you were, as you were on top of him, you were in control. But then it wound up that Hogan wound up getting out of the cage, and it just wound up with you and Flair.
Terry was famous for agreeing to stuff. Yeah, sure, sounds good. And then the day of the match, say, no, this is what it's going to be. I mean, an hour before the show. So that, it gives you really no opportunity whatsoever to try to compromise or change the situation. And I mean, like when we were in Vegas and they said, Cherry wants you to powerbomb, he's gonna lay there because he thinks it'd be good business. And then he gets up and calls a spot with me. I couldn't believe it. It's the most unprofessional thing anybody had ever done. And certainly if I was going to get upset and would have wanted to double cross him, I would have done so in Baltimore, and didn't do so. I continued to be a professional, trying to feed my family.
I had seen where, like I said, read between the lines. I had kind of seen where Jim Powers was going with WCW with the change of the booker, and I could see like some handwriting on the wall that, Jim, it was all NWO. Everybody was part of NWO, red, black, I don't know, whatever, colors they had. And I said, well, I don't know if there's, Jim, I don't know if they're going to do much with Jim Powers. So what I did was, they kept me on a pay. They took care of me. They kept me on a payroll for first year was a decent amount of money. Decent. It was good. It was what I needed and then some. And then the next year they dropped the money down. They kept me on a payroll for 2 years. And then after that, we settled on a workman's comp thing. And that money's nowhere to be found now. It's gone, pissed away. But, that's the wrestling business. That could be any other business, too. It could be a basketball player, baseball player, football player, or even an entertainer. They had the top talent in the world. They had Hogan, they had Nash, they had Hall. They kept bringing in talent. Everyone was jumping ship.
Did you see a lot of the political battles backstage with like Hall and Nash against Hogan's clique and Goldberg?
No. I kind of got the impression everyone, because when Hulk turned, I was there. It was July 7th. It was the night before I met my wife. I'll never forget it. It was in Daytona Beach,
right?
And I don't know if it was a pay-per-view. Was it a pay-per-view?
Bash
at the Beach, right? It was Bash at the Beach, and me and Hugh Morris had a dark match, and it was like supposed to be a secret, like who this guy was going to show up. It was a limo was parked in the building the whole night. Nobody ever came out of the damn limo, and there was we were speculating. So him and I being Marks, we're both actually from the same town. Hugh and I, we grew up in the same town in New Jersey, but we said we'll hang out. What do we got to do anyway? We'll hang out. So we hung out the whole fucking night, watched the show, and it was a tremendous show. And who comes out? Hogan. Just hits the fucking ring and does a thing. And then after the finish and after they did all that shit and everything, when the match was over, I never seen so much garbage and shit flying. I haven't been to an ECW show. I'm sure there's a hell of a lot more garbage in there, but they were throwing shit in the ring. And if anyone's seen that show, they know what I'm talking about. You and I, we were running to the car to get out of the damn parking lot because people were just losing it.
What are your initial memories of meeting Hulk Hogan early on in AWA?
Wow. Well, the first time I met him, he'd gotten a little advance work done in the AWA. They were going to bring him in as a Thunderlips type heel. He was going to be managed by luscious Johnny Valiant. And sometimes you get Johnny going. He worked off an easel with a poster of Hogan. And this was after Rocky III had been released. This guy was working with Sir Edmund Francis and Lord James Blears in Hawaii. Hogan got in about the third or fourth week, and he had all this advanced publicity. And, of course, Luscious Johnny had been his mouthpiece. But when he got in, you could just see, the charisma, the way he carried himself, the way he looked, even the way he talked. High energy. And it wasn't long that the office realized, hey, this guy's not going to be a heel. Right. This guy is going to be a baby face. He's going to be our baby face. And little did we know that he would become, without any question of a doubt, the biggest star professional wrestling has ever, or probably wherever, at least in our lifetime, your lifetime, ever see.
How did your friendship grow with him early on?
Well, he was kind of the new kid on the block. He hadn't really worked in the territory as a top hand, and he had he had been, working for guys like Eddie Graham. He worked for Vince McMahon Sr., and he did a little training with Stu Hart. Hiro Matsuda down in Tampa, of course, the guy that trained him. And I believe everybody would tell you that Hogan maybe never was the greatest technical wrestler in the world. But, unlike Dean Malenko, he had all of the other things going. And I think Dean Malenko, pound for pound, is probably one of the greatest performers technically of our era. But what Hogan had, he had the ability to put asses in seats. And I think you've heard the story. There was something there that the crowd, the fans could relate to. They could sink their teeth into. They could wrap their arms around them. And the rest is history.
How hard did Vern take it when Hogan left the company?
Well, he took it very hard. He was mad. He thought that Hogan had betrayed him. I knew before Terry left for Japan that he was going to sever the ties with Vern and go to New York and work with Vince Jr. And the way he did it, though, I think for Hogan was probably not the correct way to do it. I would have sat down with Vern face to face. Hogan sent him a Western Union telegram saying it's all over. I'm going to be going to New York. Thanks for 2.5 great years, but see you later.
As time went on, did the success change Hulk Hogan as far as his personality goes with his ego and stuff? Or to you, at least, was he the same old Hulk Hogan?
I think it had to. To answer that question very honestly, I don't think he had to put his guard up like Vince McMahon had to put his guard up. Hulk made some big money through the years. And all of a sudden, these little vermin that get into our business on the ancillary side, trying to get in on the action, would be approaching Hogan for side deals and things like that, and became, after a while, I think, a constant nuisance to him. Number one, he had an exclusive contract with the WWE, so he had to honor that, didn't want to get in trouble, and these people were very persistent. He just didn't need it, so yeah, he became guarded. And sometimes, because of the work schedule, he became a little downright ornery, where he wouldn't pout, but he would sure make his feelings known. He didn't hide them.
Right. Whose idea was it for you to team up with Hogan and do that one match in Minnesota, I believe?
That was Hogan's.
Okay.
That was definitely Hogan's. I would not volunteer for anything as insane as that. And as a matter of fact, I think that really the big buildup on that was the training sessions we went through for
Right.
3 or 4 weeks, which were, we can speak candidly,
Yeah.
right? I'm not Joan Rivers,
100%.
but it was a ball buster.
Right.
The guys would have me do 3 or 4 takes on a quarter-mile run. Well, hell, I was blown up after the first quarter mile. Think of after the 4th one. And Hogan had promised me on the air that you don't even have to get in the ring. I just want you standing in my corner, and I'll take care of Fuji and George the Animal Steele. Well, he cleaned house, in the opening moments of the match. Came over to me. I high-fived him. Referee said, "Tag, you're in." A lot of fun.
Right.
A lot of fun.
What were the politics like in the 80s between Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper?
I wasn't privy to all of that, but I know that there was some heat, some friction between the two. And I think a lot of it was settled after WrestleMania 1, after the first WrestleMania. But the build-up, I think there might have been enough legitimate heat that the boys knew they had something going, because you could really feel the tension between those two. Even when I'd be back in a locker room or something, and one of them would walk by the other, there wasn't a word said. Hogan wouldn't give Piper the time of day, and Piper, who knows what he was saying under his breath. Both guys, though, you got to love them both, because they made a big mark in professional wrestling.
Without a doubt. Do you think that Hulk Hogan was a good or bad thing in the end for WCW?
Well, I think he was a good thing.
Right.
I don't think WCW without Hulk Hogan would have reached the pinnacle, the height that they did, where for 86 weeks dominated the WWF, WWE.
Right.
Hogan was a big part of that.
Did he try and look out for you there?
No. Hulk looked out for himself.
Right.
He did at other times, though, look out for me. And very close, there was a great association between Hulk Hogan and me and Gene Okerlund. And I was the one that picked up the phone and said, I've been told I'm going to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame at WrestleMania. And Hulk, I'd like to have you present me. He says, Linda, give me the calendar. He said, I got it open. Yeah, I'll do it. I said, okay. Vince or Kevin Dunn will be calling you with the details. And, I mean, it's great. He buried me on it. Talking about all the running around. I had my wife in the front row there. But, yeah, he's a great guy and a good friend.
What do you think of his reality show?
I think great. This guy reinvents himself every 10 years.
Sure.
I mean, he did it initially with Rocky, then on to a movie career after the WWE or during that period of time, a television series, and now back with this reality show, and everywhere I go. My barber talks about it all the time.
We talked a little bit about Hulk Hogan coming into the territory. What are your early memories of being around Hulkster for the first time?
Oh, it was awesome because he was so big. The movie had just come out, the Thunder Lips thing, yeah. So he was up there, and people, I said, I was a Mark II. I ate into all of that, And one time from there too, I got to tag with him in Japan in the Madison Square Garden. No, it was IWGP, but we were the MSG team MSG or whatever.
This is 1984.
Right around there, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
You guys did some 6-man matches against Hogan back in like the early 80s, mid 80s actually, I'm sorry. What do you remember about working with Hogan?
Well, for me at that time, I had a lot of, like everybody probably in WWF, Hogan was the money man. Like he was the guy that was the star of the show. No one doubted that or any dispute with that. So I was trying really hard to have as good a match with him as I possibly could. And I just kind of regret that we didn't work with him more times. I would like to have Hogan, his father, Hulk Hogan's father was a huge Hart Foundation fan.
Oh, he loved us. He might have loved us more than his own son.
Yeah, Hulk would always tell us that his dad, his favorite part of the rest of the show was the Hart Foundation. He was a big Hart Foundation fan. But we got along pretty good with Terry in those days, and I think we were trying really hard to give him everything we could and give him and sort of win his confidence.
Right.
We only had a few matches with him, but I remember we had a match one time, me, Jim, and Honky Tonk against. It was a beautiful match. Macho Man, Steamboat, and Hogan in Montreal. And we had a great match, and I think everybody involved kind of got a little bit of their own in. Like it wasn't just the Bret Hart show. It was Jim got his stuff in, and Honky got his. And we had such a great match. I think we saw unbelievable potential in all of us. Like I think we all were really confident about what happened after the match was over, about the reaction and the response we got. But it never went anywhere. It's just one of those things that was like it was gone after that.
No, Hogan's a big single on a tag situation with him, but they don't. 6 man. They don't. It's not long.
Hogan was
long with career.
He used to do that clothesline in the corner, and that was stiff as hell. It was like he wasn't getting somebody to drive a truck at you.
Didn't get time to come out.
He did. It was always stiff and always hurt. And a lot of guys got hurt by that.
Title Match Network, your source for everything pro wrestling, with exclusive live pay-per-views featuring top talent from around the world.
Oh, I like that one.
Details direct from the source with deep diving shoot interviews and podcasts.
I love it. I love being a part of Title Match Network.
Get extreme with exclusive death matches. I threw my door! And of course, the best selection in women's wrestling available.
Oh!
What's gonna happen? With thousands of clips featured on Title Match Network's YouTube channel with over 2.3 million subscribers. All at the tips of your fingers. Every style available 24/7 on demand. Visit TitleMatchNetwork.com to sign up today and start watching instantly.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Hogan started out in 76, I believe it was 76. I met him in Panama City, Florida, his first time he ever walked into the ring. Not the ring, he walked in the dressing room, Panama City. He walked in, and I almost had to throw him out of the dressing room. I said, "Who in the hell are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm Terry Bollett. I'm here, you know, I need to talk to the promoter, whatever, you know." And he was so huge then. He's all pumped up on steroids and just, you know, like 320 pounds or whatever. And he started there, and he didn't have a place to live. He was living in the back of his van. So I let him move in with me, stay in my apartment. And when he'd come to Tennessee, he'd stay at my wife and my house. And my daughter would go to the couch and sleep on the couch. He'd sleep in her bed. You know,
Right.
And I did that for a long time. And Terry and myself was very close, I thought. And I helped him all I could. He was always scared of me. He was so scared of me because he knew that I could beat him anytime I got ready.
Right.
And in the gym, we'd go work out together, we'd do this together. But he knew I could beat him anytime I got ready. And that's what Vince was scared of, which will come up later on.
Definitely.
But then Terry got the break to go up and be Thunder Lips, you know. Vince McMahon Sr. called him up there, and he went to Memphis, and that was his break. Vince called me and said, "Okay, I want you to come to New York. You'll never have to worry about going anywhere. You know, you're guaranteed I'll make you millions of dollars. You're set. Just come up here." Because now all this publicity that Vern Gagne has given me, you know, and Hogan, now Vince goes out and goes to all these towns that Vern Gagne's running when he's reaching out.
Right.
And who's main event? Hogan and me, which is Minneapolis, you know, Denver, San Francisco, LA, just everywhere that, you know, Vern was having the matches and Hogan and me was building up for those, which never happened. And then Vince comes back and we go in there.
Huh.
So basically, Vince stuck it to Vern pretty good.
So Hogan went to AWA, I believe, in, you said November of 82. That's when he got contacted? Well, he went in 83 for them.
I believe it was November 82. And he left in November 82, I believe. Yes, I believe it was.
Did you ever hear the story about, I guess, Iron Sheik getting offered $100,000 to break Hogan's leg by Vern?
No.
Okay.
Never heard that.
There was a story that was going around. I don't know how true it was.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if Iron Sheik could break his leg.
All right.
You know, he was big when I first met him, but he was getting big in the business. Yeah, he started getting he didn't want to be a regular guy anymore. He wanted a special dressing room. He wanted to be out by himself. He didn't want, you know, he was bigger than everybody else.
He was big leaguing people?
Yes, big. He didn't want to be associated with, you know, even though he'd come to my house every day, eat every day. I mean, you know, him and his wife, Linda, before they got married, you know, we'd always work out together, and he'd go to Japan. I'd take care of his house. And matter of fact, he still owed me $250 for some utility bills I paid for him. He never paid me. So I guess he got all these millions. He could send me my money plus interest. Like, you know.
All right.
But you know, he got too big. He thought he was bigger than everybody else, better than everybody else, and he still thinks he's better than everybody else. As far as I'm concerned.
Could you tell by the reaction he was getting in your matches that he was going to blow up?
Yeah, his matches never went too long, and you could tell he was out of breath. You know, he never was one that would run or, you know, treadmill or anything. All he did was work out and do the steroids. I didn't think he would ever be that popular, you know, because come on, the guy can't wrestle a lick.
Right.
I mean, you know, he can't do anything, and he drops his leg on people, and you know, and people buy it, and he goes out there and holds his ear, and people yell. I mean, that's pretty good way to make a living. Go to the ring and go like this a couple of times and drop a leg, and you know.
Well, I guess we talk about the legendary Minneapolis Massacre match with Hogan that is still talked about to this day. What are your memories of that match?
Oh yeah, that was. Well, there was a lot of blood in it. Hogan was bloody, I was bloody. We both went to the hospital, got stitches and all, you know. And Vern Gagne was upset because we were making people sick because of so much blood. And, you know, we was fighting on the floor and all out. We carried it all out in the crowd, and people was getting involved, throwing chairs. And that was the one that was building up to come back to.
Right.
For Vince.
Took you guys.
Yeah. Huh. So that was a big comeback and a big letdown because Hogan didn't show up.
I guess how different was it wrestling Hogan in WWF as compared to years ago in AWA?
It was WWF. He wanted everything. He wanted to be the star. He wanted to be, they was pushing him big time, and you had to take a lot of the match that he didn't want to give you.
Right.
In AWA, he was more laid back, easy, and all that. He would go along with a lot of things, and you didn't have to force him or anything. So, but with Vince, you'd have to take what you wanted. It wasn't hard to take it from him. No, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But you don't want to mess the match up. You don't want to get anything out of order. You want to keep the fans happy and keep the TV show going, everything.
Why is it that you and Hogan never headlined MSG?
Well, they wouldn't let us headline it. They always kept us down. They would they would build us up for a match, and then they put somebody on top of us like Piper and Snuka or Andre and somebody else, but never did get there to the main event there in Madison Square Garden.
It seemed like for a while they didn't really have a program for you other than like title matches with Hogan. You worked with a lot of enhancement guys, and on house shows you even worked Ivan Putski. Why was that?
Well, they wanted Hogan over. They wanted Hogan over for other names. So my job was to come in there and put him over, keep him, make him strong. And then for me to drop back down and work underneath for 6 months, 8 months or something like that, and then start building back up and go around again. So, I'm from Tennessee. I'm a country guy. I do what the boss says. I work for a guy. He tells me to do something, I do it. He tells me to throw this guy out this door. He goes out this door. That's where I get my pay from. That's what I do.
All right.
And, that's what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to go out, have Hogan, make him look good, make him act like he could beat the world, and that's what I did. If I worked with Putski, I would do the same thing with him. Junkyard Dog, I do the same thing with him. Samoans, I do the same thing with him. I was all business.
What started the problems with you and Hogan?
Vince. Right. Vince didn't want Hogan hanging around with me. He wanted to get me separated from Hogan, and that's what I was told.
Right.
And Vince didn't. Vince come to me and he said, "You need to lighten up on these guys. You're too rough on these guys." And he said, "I know you got all these people scared of you, but I'm not scared of you." And I said, "Well, you should be." And I guess that was when Vince said, "Hey, I need to get rid of this guy, but I don't need to I need to use all of his talent or what he's got and get it off of him before I get rid of him." Right. But I didn't know that until I was set up. But, that's the way he worked.
What were your initial impressions of Hogan around that time?
Well, Hogan and I go way back. I knew Hogan before he ever, he used to play in a rock and roll band in Tampa called Ruckus. And I was the bouncer at a lot of clubs in Tampa. And when he was playing in these clubs, I was usually the bouncer.
Oh, wow.
I knew him before he was ever in the business. Oh. And I was even working in a bar in Athens, Georgia one time, and they played there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was pretty wild.
Oh, wow. Was he, I guess going back with him, was he helpful to you at all in that WWF?
Me and Terry have respect for each other, but, we're not, like I live in Tampa and he invites all these guys over and, that are in the business and stuff. I never been invited. There's mutual respect. I mean, yeah. In his book that he put out, he's got a whole chapter. It's only 3 pages, but it's a whole chapter, man, about me being tough and, being able to take care of myself in and outside of the ring,
You got that early on in your career, before Piper came along into the company. You worked Hulk Hogan at MSG.
Right.
What are your memories of working Hulk when he was a heel managed by Blassie?
I gave him his first bump.
Wow.
And it was a press slam. The first bump Hogan took, because back in them days, if you were 300 plus pounds, you didn't have to take a lot of bumps. So when I press slam Hogan, it was pretty much his first bump.
Did you see potential in Hogan, like right away?
No.
You didn't think he was going to be a big star?
Anybody could be a star. What makes a star is the promoter. And at that time, I didn't see him being a big star because I just didn't see the promoter doing anything for him. And the person that take credit for Hulk Hogan is Sylvester Stallone. If Hogan had never made that movie, I don't think he would have been a big star. And that's the bottom line. Because that movie became like fire. It set off the career for Mr. T. And several other people got a great career off of that movie. You know, so Hogan wasn't the only one that sprung off that movie and became a great star. It was just Stallone. Stallone made Hogan.
What are your memories of a young Hogan in Alabama?
Well, Hogan, believe it or not, had a band in Clearwater, Florida. I guess he worked out because he was always big.
Yep.
And he wanted to get into wrestling, and almost like Devon Eric, at first he didn't know anything about wrestling. He just thought his strength was going to get him over, knock somebody down, step on him. Me and the Superstars showed him after a week that wasn't true, and he actually paid Harley Race $10,000 to teach him some wrestling moves, you know. And he was such a paradox because there was guys with better build than Hulk Hogan in the business, but somehow or another, all the kids in the world, they called it Hulkamania, thought they could work out with weights for 2 weeks and look like Hulk Hogan, right? He did one of the most horrible finishes, what we call of all, dropping the knee across the guy's throat or the leg across his throat. Sometimes he missed, but the people loved him, and I guess when I think he carried, he was really hurting also. I think his knee or something was hurt. For 3 years he tried in pain to carry the territory, but he finally realized he couldn't do it, so he slowly got himself out. And I'm not mad at him. I think it would have been great had they brought me up. We'd have had a series of matches. I'd have got a chance to wrestle in the WWF, but it helped me out because I just got the Hall of Fame in Eastern United States. And I say that, you know, Triple H never beat Alex Baker. Hulk Hogan never beat. None of the guys beat me in the WWE because I was never in the WWE.
Right.
So everybody can't say that. I can because they never allowed me to wrestle the guys.
Why don't you think Vince Sr. actually used you more?
Vince was a man of his word, and the first time I talked to him, he said, "Ox, I'm going to bring you in a little later." And so he kept his word. He brought me in a little later. But the last 2 times he brought me in, Vince Sr. was real sick, right? And everybody was surprised that Junior would even take it over because at the time there was 3 or 4 guys he had pieces of the territory. But when he took it over, Junior, who's been proven to probably the greatest promoter of all times, money-wise, he is, right?
Right.
He folded the territory up and completely collapsed it, right? And the next day he filed to be the owner of the WWE, and he took the whole thing over. And as far as I know, he's actually the only boss they have now.
Yep. You could have had a major program back in the day with Backlund, big time.
Well, in fact, if someone said that they wanted me to wrestle Backlund, right, but it never came about, you know. I got at the time, like you get good breaks. I think the break of Vince Sr. being ill was a bad break for me.
Definitely.
Going back to the infancy of like Bischoff there, was there a lot of jealousy like when Hogan came in? Because I heard like when Hogan left, Vince offered him like $4 million or something, but I heard Bischoff gave like $29 million that first year when they went to the 12 pay-per-views.
I wouldn't believe that. I don't know what Vince. I don't know what the deal was with Vince and Hogan. The only thing I know is this: it just kind of worked out the way it was. You know, we had this idea with the New World Order and the invasion angle with Scott Hall. Eric had it laid out one way. It wasn't good. I changed the whole beginning and reprogrammed the whole beginning of the New World Order. I did it right there on a Monday Nitro in front of a bunch of people. And that's when we had Scott Hall come down and bust into the ring, and we did it right. But Eric would listen, so things worked out right. Hogan was in before that. If you remember, they brought Hogan in before as a good guy.
Right.
And they had ticket tape
Yeah.
and Hogan. And the bad thing with Hogan was it didn't get over.
Right.
It didn't get over.
They had Rodman in or something.
All kinds of stuff. I mean, but it just didn't get over. And then when the New World Order got out, Hogan's the one that wanted to switch because he knew that would keep him alive.
Right.
But when they first brought Hogan in before the New World Order as a babyface, it wasn't.
Sullivan, I think, and all those guys.
Yeah. And they had some stupid, but then they were going off and they started going off in these stupid directions following what Vince was doing with these skits. Now that you mentioned that, I remember some of this nonsense, and I was fighting it. I was saying, what are you doing? I mean, Hogan comes in and they have these skits. Now, Hogan's walking around in the middle of nowhere. Remember this one? Somehow, he gets lost. He falls down a hole and winds up in a cave.
Oh,
with Prince Ayakea sitting in an underground cave. He doesn't know where he is. However, the cameraman happened to be in the cave.
It's bad stuff.
So the whole thing is so corny.
It's not even realistic.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Why are they still doing it?
Right.
They're still doing it. It's unrealistic. It's stupid. The fans don't want to see it, so why do they keep... The biggest fight I have with TNA is the skits.
Who stood you off? One of the boys?
Hogan.
Hogan stood you off, okay.
Well, that was because of the lawsuit.
Right, okay.
Yeah, no, during the lawsuit, we had to depose Vince. I told my attorney about the union thing. I said, if you can find out who told Vince in this deposition, and I told him those stories. So at that point, my attorney's very brilliant because they ended up beating Vince.
Right.
He had Vince sitting there and he said, Mr. McMahon, in deposition, he says, has wrestling ever had a union? And Vince, of course, said no. My attorney said, has anyone ever tried to form a union? And Vince paused me and said, yeah. He said, I think Jesse Ventura spouted his mouth off about it one time or another because now Vince didn't like me. I'm suing him, right? And my attorney said, well, did you hear Mr. Ventura say it? And Vince, with no hesitation, oh, no, Hulk Hogan told me. And I didn't show no emotion, but I almost fell to the floor because Hogan was a friend. And I found out, my God, it was Hogan who stooged me to Vince for trying to... And Hogan denies it. Well, Vince admitted it under oath in a federal deposition, and he also admitted it on Larry King's show, because Larry breached the subject with him, and he backed it up again. So you tell me who's lying, Hogan or Vince?
Wow. I know Hogan went on Howard Stern, and I don't know if you wanted to comment about this at all, and he made some accusations about you being a wife swapper and smoking pot with you and Adrian Adonis. Was that even... That's all...
Well, first of all, yeah, I smoked pot. Who didn't?
Right.
Wife swapping? Ridiculous.
Okay.
Let me challenge back and go, I've been married 37 years to one woman. What happened to his wife?
Okay, I had to throw that out there and ask you that question.
Why do you think I hate him now?
Right.
That he would go out and say, I'm a wife.
Have you heard that before, or is this the first time?
Howard told me.
Okay, yeah.
I know about it. Howard told me when I was on with him.
Okay.
That's the biggest crack of crap I've ever heard. Oh, yeah, I had the Plato's Retreat stuff. My wife and I went down there. We wanted to see what it was. We watched it, and I bought a T-shirt because I knew it'd be controversial as hell.
Right.
Yeah, because I used to wear it with the beads, Plato's Retreat, when I wrestled in 81, I think, or something like that. Wife swapping. Well, they threw the doc in jail.
Right, sorry.
I don't have to talk about it. I want to know, how did Hogan get out of testifying in that? That's what I'd like to know. How did he get out of having to testify in that?
What are your thoughts on that trial?
I don't know. I just thought the doc was a bit of a scapegoat. He ended up taking the blunt of the heat for it and went to jail for it. And what were we supposed to believe? Hogan didn't take him? Hell, I bought him from Hogan. Hogan dealt him.
Wow.
He didn't just take him, he dealt him. Because I bought from him. I bought testosterone from Hogan.
Oh, Hogan was phenomenal. When he came into the AWA, Vern wanted him to be a heel. So he put him with a horrible human being, Johnny Valiant. This guy couldn't get over turning on a light. And I don't care how many people Hogan beat, people wanted him to be a babyface. They loved him. And that's the way it went.
Did you know that he was going to be a huge star in the business?
Oh, yeah. I saw him in 79 in Georgia. I walked in the dressing room. He was just huge. And I just saw, this kid's got it. He's one of those guys that just had it. Him and Hogan have a problem.
Right.
Jesse has a bigger problem than Hogan does.
What is the real story between the two? I mean, that's fine.
I think, first of all, Jesse always wanted to be superstar Billy Graham. And then Graham disappeared. And then in Minneapolis, then Hogan came in. And Jesse was jealous of Hogan. That's what it was. Jesse probably has more sleepless nights worrying about Hogan than he does the state of Minnesota. Hogan is never worried about Jesse. And that's what it is, I think. Jesse is jealous of Hogan.
And it carried over there.
Jesse was a great talker. Had strange looking outfits. But when the bell rang, it was over.
Couldn't work.
No.
No.
No disgrace. No disgrace to that, because I can't be a governor of a state. But he couldn't work. But he could work, because he could draw people. But he couldn't take bumps, and he couldn't entertain you physically in the ring.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
He must be good at politics because he's not doing that. So.
Well, a lot of people can do that. You know, a lot of people are. There's a lot of good preachers out there too.
Exactly.
You know.
Was Hogan different to work with in the WWF than he was in the AWA because of
No.
bigger star?
No, he never changed. He wasn't that way. A lot of guys don't like him because they didn't get to work with Hogan. The reason they didn't get to work with Hogan is because they couldn't draw money with Hogan. And you guys that are sitting home right now and are saying, Hogan screwed me. If you could have drawn money, you'd have been there. If you could have been the worst human being in life, you'd have been there to draw money. The only reason you didn't work with Hogan was you couldn't draw money. That's simple. He'd work with a grape if he could draw money. That's simple. Hogan
brought you in?
Yeah. Hogan called me. I was in Minneapolis. I got him into AWA. And he called me. I went to Japan. And when I got back, he called me a couple times, wanted me to go. But AWA was easy. You worked 3 or 4 days a week, and you made good money. You didn't have to work every day. I didn't want to work every day. I had a wife and a kid, and I didn't want to work every day. I just don't like traveling and working every day.
Right.
And he told me to go call Vince, and he put together a deal, and Vince offered me 3 times what I was making at the AWA. So I had to go for it.
So you think Hogan had more influence in the back?
I think he had more influence than what everybody gives him credit for.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think he's a politician?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? He's Hulk Hogan. You don't get to be Hulk Hogan without knowing how to work the game.
Right.
You know?
But you always had good dealings with him.
I always got to go look with Hogan. I wasn't a friend with Hogan like Hawk or Nasty Boys or any of those guys were. Because then again, I wasn't the guy that liked to do those kind of things. Now, Hulk's a lot different today. If he was a Hulk Hogan today, I think we would have got along fine. But back then, it wasn't like that.
Do you think he got a raw deal by WWE, or you think they were justified?
I think it's because it's a publicly traded company.
Right.
That's why he got hand slapped. There's not one of us in the wrestling business, black or white, that hasn't said something stupid like that in their privacy of their own hotel room.
Right.
Now, for some idiot to record it and play it publicly, that's why Hogan won the lawsuit.
Right.
And he should have won the lawsuit. I don't think it should have been out there in TMZ or any other things because it's not any of their people's business or news. Somehow we got our news system in the U.S. has gotten so jacked up that they think everybody's got the right to know everything, and they really don't. So I think Hogan got really a raw deal. How you could take them off the WWE website, how you can not honor him as the greatest guy that's ever been in WWE, I don't know.
Right.
Because he is. I mean, if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, I'll tell you right now, there would be no Roman Reigns, there would be no Cena, there would be no Ultimate Warrior, nobody else. The company would be dead.
Agreed. Do you think they'll ever bring him back?
No. I don't see it. I don't see it. I heard rumblings that they were going to do it. If they were going to do it, they would have done it already. I don't know what capacity they would bring him back in. I know somebody threw it around online that he was going to do one last hurrah with Flair, but then Flair got sick, so that's out of the window. I don't know for what reason he would even want to get back in the ring.
Maybe not to work, but just bring him back as an ambassador or something
Well, maybe
along
as
those
ambassador,
lines.
bro, but I think that particular interview is done. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that particular interview, the way he did it then, I think is done. You know, say your prayers, little Hulkamaniacs. I think that era's done. Now, if he came and reinvented a little bit and changed it up, it might work, but I don't know if he could. Now, I don't know. I think he's too big a name to have him come in and be the commissioner of Raw or whatever that position is there, they call it, you know, general manager of Raw or SmackDown. He's above that, man.
Agreed.
He's above that. But if they worked the gimmick where he would buy in and become part owner of WWE, then it could be Hogan as owner against Shane McMahon as owner. Then I think you could have a battle. Because I think Vince needs to go like this. He needs to slip out. He can stay behind the scenes, but I think that the new face, like Shane or Hunter's got to be involved, where you have the new school guys' ideas against Hulk Hogan's ideas, and you have them clash with talent. I think that would work.
Right.
And I think it would be cool, and I think the fans will love it if Hogan says, hey, say he's got the Raw or SmackDown crew. Listen, all this high-flying bullcrap that everybody's doing and nobody's selling finishes ain't going to cut it. This is the way we're going to do business. I think the fans want to see it go back to basics. Because I think so many times in a match, they're going like this, like it's a ping pong match going boom, 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 boom. They can't register all the crap that's going on in the ring.
Right.
They're lost. You know, the smart fan can, like you're a smart fan, you know, I love the guys I know are smart. Smart fan can figure it out, but the guy who's being introduced to it, they can't figure it out. There's surely not the 10 and 12-year-old doesn't know what's going on.
You know what? It's like anything else, you know. It's like Hulk has a completely different aspect of the business. Eric has a completely different aspect of the business. Vince has a different aspect. Dixie has a different aspect. So now all of a sudden, you know, like, and I've used this analogy before. It's like there's this pot and it's on the fucking kettle, and me and Sean say, hey man, you know, it'd be good right now, it'd be some fucking venison chili.
Yeah.
So we put venison in, and we put some chili beans in, and we put some other shit, and we walk away. And then they grab it and they go, was there a piss test? And they both, the two guys piss in it. And then Dixie says, what is there, a stool sample? And fucking she shits in it. And then fucking Russo goes, what is it, matzo balls? Matzo ball soup? He throws matzo balls in it. And then fucking somebody tastes it.
Somebody shakes a little duck butter in on top just for
a little head cheese. And then it's just like, you know, it's like there's way too many chefs. You got Hulk that's got like major stroke, that's went through like 6 back surgeries. You know, and you can say what you want to about Hulk Hogan. Man, like, when we first like got with him, me and Scott were like, you know, Hulk, you know, he's the legend, let's chop him down. But the more you're around him, you're like, no man, like Hulk's who he is because Hulk's Hulk. And like now it's just like, you watch the fucking guy, you know, he's 3 days on back surgery. He's walking down the ramp, he's walking through shit, he's in so much fucking pain, but this mother, you know, he's the kind of guy, he's the guy in Mighty Python, he's missing 2 arms, he's going, merely a flesh wound, merely a flesh wound. I mean, that's Hulk, you know, so it's just like, he's laying in fucking bed right now, he can't even fucking sit up, he's doing fucking flip fuckings from the bed, you know, saying, you know, and I know for a fact that motherfucker will be across the ring from me at Bound for Glory. And he'll fucking perform, you know? I mean, that's Hulk. Hulk's not at 100%, you know? And Eric feeds a lot off of Hulk, you know? And then Russo doesn't know, I don't think where the power, like, you know, there's like that power kind of shifts, so he doesn't know where he's at,
And
A lot of
it's
guys
just-
walking on eggshells
Yeah.
around there too, not wanting to step on toes. I noticed that when I was back there, you know.
Right.
It was a big situation like that.
And
you
it's
know?
just like it's growing. Like when you can't bring in Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. It's not like you're bringing in two fucking ham and eggers. I mean, you're bringing the only guy in the history of fucking professional wrestling to fucking beat Vince McMahon, and you're bringing in fucking who I think is the greatest pro wrestler of all time.
It's interesting because when Hogan did return to WWF in the early 2000s, he was brought back as a heel. And he was a heel at that time when he was negotiating. But the fans refused to accept him as a heel.
In WWE.
In WWE. Even after, as you pointed out earlier today, he ran over The Rock with a semi.
Right.
They still were going to cheer this guy. So it's interesting because he was right at the beginning of that really hot run with the NWO, and he could have potentially come back to WWF. What were the thoughts backstage behind what would we do with Hogan if he came back?
Well, the only ones that knew of that were myself, Vince, and the CEO at the time, Neville Meyer.
Then you guys talk about that at all, about how he would handle it, or just let's see if we can get him back first?
Well, it was simply a situation. His contract was up.
Yeah.
He had the ability to negotiate. He was negotiating. He was seeing what was out there, sending out feelers. And we were looking at, it was at the same time that Bret had been offered to go to WCW. His contract was coming up. It's like, okay, here's the money you've got. Does it go over here? Does it go over here? Hogan was a proven commodity. Bret wasn't really a proven commodity at that point, but we were banking on him. You know, we were hoping he would be. And it was just something that we investigated. It was you know, why the hell wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Muhammad Ali shows up and he's available. Okay, let's talk.
Yeah, let's see what we can do.
It doesn't hurt to talk, and I think I said it on there, but I remember when Vince went to meet him somewhere in Colorado, and said, "Well, you want to meet in the room?" I said, "No, we'll meet downstairs in the bar.
Make it public."
So I've got nothing to hide. They know I'm negotiating.
Yeah.
So.
And then I think you pointed out that, Vince, ended the conversation with, if I make you an offer and it helps you, I'll do that. Which is just like, to me, people talk about the cutthroat Vince McMahon and, he'll do anything to cut you off at the knees. But to me, that was saying something of, here's a guy who's his big star, left, became a big star for the other company, made the other company what it was at the time, and you're still willing to say, hey, I'll help you out if I can.
Yeah, it's good business.
Don't burn bridges.
No, and it was good business. It's a double-edged sword too. We'll help you out, make them spend more money for you.
That's true.
So it can be looked at both ways.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
But at the same time, Vince was looking after the guy that had helped build his company and carried it on his back for a long time, in Hulk Hogan, and I think that was, simply a gesture of, help. He's done it for a lot of guys.
What are your memories of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage around this time period? What were they like?
We were in this, you're in the locker room and you're in the territory, but I can speak for myself. We were so consumed with what we're doing with the various tag teams. We knew that they were in one of the matches earlier or later. But when we were involved in the that immediate atmosphere, we had very little contact. You'd say hello and how's things going, but we're talking with the Bulldogs or the Powers of Pain or whoever it is at that time, and you got to be focused on your match.
Right.
I think one thing that I was confused about is Randy didn't have his own identity. Randy sort of tried to capture a little bit of whatever Hogan. If Hogan dressed a certain way, then Randy dressed a certain way. If Hogan wore a certain type of boot, then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, he was trying to be, you can't be Hogan. Hogan was the franchise. He could be Randy Savage and identify himself, but he tried, I think, by getting closer to him, maybe that was going to rub off. And it was a strange situation.
Yeah, but good guys.
Yeah. I mean, we never had a problem with it.
Yeah, they were good guys. I mean, you wanted to be on the same card as Hulk.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was money.
Yeah.
Geez, sold out. You know.
Well, we were just talking about that earlier. I mean, and they sold a package deal at the time.
Yeah.
What about memories of your wrestling? I guess the main event against Hogan on a pay-per-view at Survivor Series. What are your memories of that match? I think it was. I don't know what Survivor Series it was, but
Oh, it was a tag?
yeah,
he was our partner.
He was your partner.
Yeah, he was our partner. It was,
And with Jake the Snake.
him and Jake and us against
That's when Jake brought in that
Zeus
30-foot snake or whatever,
Jesus.
and
Nobody we couldn't pick it up.
well, you walked into the shower.
Chicago.
Yeah, you walked into the shower and the dang snake come up with the teeth and everything. And
Yeah.
Hogan says, "There ain't no way we're carrying that out there."
Yeah.
And we had all four of us trying to carry that thing.
Oh, the
and,
thing was strong.
oh, it was unbelievable. But we didn't know ahead of time. All the guys, the Bulldogs and everybody, they'd kick it and take the bag and hit it and run hot water on it.
That
and
was
everything.
Zeus and I don't remember our opponents.
I don't remember either.
That was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Wasn't there Zeus, the Road Warriors, and somebody else? The Road Warriors weren't there yet.
No, they weren't. They wouldn't have been.
But then it ended up being where they left the snake at the building in that box, and the janitor was supposed to load it and never loaded it. The snake got out and crawled up in the top
Jake
of
told us about that. Yeah.
the horizon.
That
They
was-
couldn't find it.
You know,
Oh.
I'm not afraid of snakes, but I don't like to be around them.
Right.
And when you was on a card with Jake, there was always a python in the shower.
Oh, jeez.
You never knew where it was going to be in the shower. You'd turn the water on so it would be wet, but you didn't know if it was going to the toilet. You're going to the bathroom and the snake comes underneath. You know, geez, it was an eerie feeling.
Sometimes you see Jake coming, oh, you know, he can't get the bag. You know, I mean, the dang thing was just nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think he really liked snakes either. I think it was just.
I'll tell you one thing I would have never done. I would have never let them put the snake on me. If I was passed out,
Right.
and never done that.
He did it to me.
That would have been my notice.
And then that one snake bit Andre in the arm. Remember, and the teeth was in his arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what the hell is this? You know, oh, there's a tooth in his arm. You know.
I see Lou Thez there. You know, like I was telling a while ago, buddy told Buddy Rogers, you know, we do it the easy way or the hard way. I worked. I never got to work Lou, but a lot of shows with him. And actually, I was a booker for my trainer when we brought Lou Thez in and put him against George South. And when he was, I don't know, a rookie, a year or two in the business, and he come back here and said, "What are we going to do, Lou?" Well, he just kept, I do this and I do that. And Lou said, "Well, the first thing they do is you shut the hell up." No nonsense guy. I know he hated Hulk Hogan's guts.
Was there a particular reason, or just
Because he's.
he was like, why the fuck?
Because he was just because he said he's a great showman, entertainer, but he said it's a sin to call him a wrestler. I believe Adrian Street, Exotic Adrian, said if he was hung for being a wrestler, he'd die an innocent man.
Now, you also worked Hogan in '89, I think, right?
I had a few shots,
Right.
not many. Once again, another McMahon promise when I first came there was a big run with Hogan. You get the big run with Hogan, you're talking, like I said, instead of making $10,000 a week with the Intercontinental belt, now you're making 15, 18, 20, 30,000 a week with Hogan. Kamala, 3 shots with Hogan, $18,000. 3 shots, he gets mad and quits. Orndorff, 1 show with Hogan, $50,000 in Toronto. I mean, this was serious money to work on top with Hogan. I was promised that run, and I always wanted that run. I thought, me with the Intercontinental belt going against Hogan, belt versus belt, title versus title, I'll have both those belts at the end of the night around the country. Would have been great business. It did sell out to Meadowlands. We did it once. Sold out. Turned people away. I made $8,000 for that show that night in the Meadowlands. And it's funny, I worked with Steamboat. It was sold out. I made $6,000. I don't understand it. But anyway, that's the difference. I would have had 7 nights a week with Hogan at $7,000 or $8,000 a week. You're talking $60,000, $70,000 a week.
Incredible.
Now, Boss Man got that run. He didn't deserve it. He got that run. Dibiase came in and had that run for a year with Andre and Hogan on top. That was a serious run. Rick Rude got the run with Hogan. Dino Bravo got a run with Hogan. Like I said, Kamala got a run with Hogan. Jake got a run with Hogan. Savage got 2 or 3 runs with Hogan. Now think about that. Savage not only got a run as a heel a couple of times with Hogan, but then came back as a babyface and got a run with Hogan.
Right.
And it's like I said, when you're talking $7,000-8,000 a night, and we did 5 days a week and 4 on Sunday. That's 9 shows. Let's just say 9 times 8. Y'all do the math. 72 grand a week. Now that's what the guy made that worked against Hogan. What was Hogan making?
Right.
You see? Now, Hogan's in WCW at $4 million a year, they say. If he went to Bischoff and said, Eric, this is my friend, he came here, give him 50 grand a year. Is that going to hurt Hogan? Is that going to take any money out of his pocket? For Christ's sakes. But keep in mind, if Hogan made 50, 60, 100 grand a week, what was McMahon making? He's making 20 times that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I thought that it would have been good because I was hoping, at that time, Hogan was on fire. And to get Hogan to come over there, then it meant that everybody was going to make some money now. And my thing is, I just want to be on the card. Wherever Hogan is, let's put me on that card, right. So I can get a payday. So I think it was good for WCW. Well, I think basically back then, the fans were just happy to have something. You know what I mean? You can see how huge that NWO was when that thing first come out. You know what I mean? That was brand new. That was something different. And that's what you got to have now, And we don't have that now. And I think, when Hogan came over there, I think like you said, a lot of people rejected and a lot of people went for it because Hogan had a big following. And I felt that, they also felt that maybe now it'll change WCW around, especially when Nash and Hall and all of them started to come, people could see them coming from Vince, what's wrong here, So I think I think they went in the right direction, but they got greedy. Well, at the time when WCW Nitro was live, it was on and popping. It was out there, But once Vince got a grip and got a hold of what was being done to him, then he knew what to do. Vince was a businessman. He knows what to do, where other guys were so busy trying to put him out of business till he was thinking about how to stay in business. So, and he did a good job of that.
Initial impressions of Hulk Hogan?
Oh, God, I'll never forget it. Like I said, standing by the curtain, wanting to see what was going on. I'll never forget it. Here I am, just came up, and this was when I was trying out. I hadn't even got signed yet. And Pat Patterson, real nice, took to me, and I took to Pat Patterson. Always nice to me, great guy, never negative, fantastic. We always joked with each other. Pat seen I was standing there, Hogan's getting ready to go through the curtains, I'm just watching. Pat says, come here. He takes me out there inside the arena, like where you'd come through the curtain about 15 feet in, and we're standing off to the side. He says, just watch this. All of a sudden that music hits, Hulk Hogan's music. This is like, right 91, and things were still rocking and rolling, Right. That music hit, Hulk Hogan's music, man, he came through the curtain and just like, boom! That initial pop, It was just like it was overwhelming.
Right.
And Pat was going, look. And I'm watching Hogan walk, and I'm just looking at the fans. What a great experience.
Yeah.
So, I've always looked at Hogan, God, he's the guy that, that was part with Vince McMahon, working together, that took it from what it was and excelled it to a totally different level. Mm-hmm. Hulk Hogan's, the immortal Hulk Hogan. He's the one that we started riding that wave. A lot of people, some people don't want to say that, but it's the reality of the fact, So I'm looking at Hulk Hogan today. If it wasn't that strong, why is Hulk Hogan still going strong?
Right.
Already been back at WWE, got his own show. Everyone knows who he is. So because of what he had built and how over he was and what WWF had did with him and what he had also done for the business was just fantastic. So a lot of respect for him because he was, he paved the way.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Memories of Hogan at the time. What was he like?
I don't know.
Did you get along with him? I mean,
no, actually, I think Buzz had problems with Hogan back, steroid related. Buzz owed him money for steroids from before I even knew Buzz. And somehow Buzz and I are put in the same picture a lot of times, you know. A lot of people thought Buzz and I were brothers. I mean, blood brothers, but Hogan, I don't really know him that well, you know. I know that, you know, he never wanted to work with me as Doink. Sad. But it is what it is.
do you consider him one of the boys, or do you consider Hogan by himself? And
you know what? He's got his circle of friends, you know, and I'm sure that they consider him the epitome of, you know, the boys. But no, I personally, I don't. You know, I'm not going to say anything nasty about the guy, but I don't even know him.
I don't care for Hogan. I never have. To me, he's done this business a lot. But he's also hurt it, to me, more than what he's helped it.
in what aspects?
It used to be a sport. How can you have a non-athletic person in a sport as wrestling is supposed to be a tough sport? All he could do was play the guitar. And now they got him as a top spot, which, like, let me tell you something, he's made a lot of people a lot of money. He's also made a lot of money himself, but he's taken a lot of people out of it. A lot of your athletes have been taken out because they're not colorful. And that's all Hogan, and not really Hogan's fault, it's Vince's fault. He took Hogan and made him a superstar, gave him a beautiful gimmick, and he's done wonders with it. But he hurt the wrestling business.
Do you blame him, though, for making all the money? I mean, if you were...
No, you can't blame him. I just never liked him anyway.
Right.
I met him out in Pensacola. I think that's where he was. He was from Pensacola, I think. That's where he started. Anyway, that's where he would come to. They would come to Bullet Bob and want to have matches, and he wouldn't use them. Heck, I think this was even before Hogan was Hogan. They just put the Alabama heavyweight strap on me. It's the first belt that I ever got. Bob Armstrong put it on me, and Fuller's put it on me. They were the owners. Bob was the booker. But and I may be wrong, but brother, they said, I want you to go to the ring, and I want you to beat the living fire out of this guy. Just put the belt on the table there and pack your bags and leave. So okay, I think I can. I'll try my best. I was Man Mountain Harris at the time, and I went out there. And this little skinny guy, he's about 6'5", 6'6", the skinny guy, you know. And I pounded him and pounded him and pounded him. Told him I was sorry. Pounded him, pinned him, beat him up pretty much like I was told, and pinned him 1, 2, 3, and went home. And about 8 years later, I turned on the dadgum TV, and there's that little skinny guy on TV carrying the WWE heavyweight belt. And it's Hulk Hogan. And I said, no, if I ever have to go up there, boy, I'm gonna have to face that one. I know. Yeah. But when I did go up there, Terry would, Terry, how you doing, brother? Yeah, fine, man, fine.
Were there ever plans during that period when you were as over as you were, working with Randy Savage, working with Warrior, all the other people you work with, to have you program with Hogan and work the top of the card, or was that never?
They tried that. We're at the top of the fucking card. Fuck you.
I'm sorry.
I was at the top of the card, bro.
I don't mean like that.
What a piece of shit.
I don't mean like that.
You Bill Watts' buddy? I was working the main events.
They tried to put me with Hogan, but you fans screwed me on that because he started chanting DDT, DDT after I dropped him. And Vince looked at me and he goes, man, that ain't going to fly. What do you mean it's not going to fly? Because they're cheering for you. So they're just happy that, whatever. And so we tried it in 2 towns. We sold out those cities, turned people away. And I said, there. Can't beat that. Not going to happen. Why? Because they're chanting for you. Does it fucking matter who they're chanting for? The seats are sold out. That's going to screw with our marketing. Yeah. So that was the end of that. So my job became getting the next bad guy ready for Hogan. So if Hogan was in Los Angeles, I would be in San Francisco. And getting beat by the next card was going to be Hogan versus this guy, that just beat me. But it was a lucrative job. I hated the fact that I was never given the belt, but that was a lot of my fault because of my addictions. I want to say this. I never meant to cheat the fans out of a good match. Even when I was high or hungover. In those instances, I would wind up going out there and giving you twice the time because I was so angry with myself that I'd allowed myself to be in not proper at the time. I often wonder how well it would have went if it had not had problems. Sometimes when you have problems, you learn a lot. And I certainly learned that alcohol and drugs aren't good for you and that it can hurt your career and it can hurt your family. The last one I care about. In the last 5 years, I've gotten myself back in the right world with the help of Diamond Dallas Page and others. I've been clean now for 5 years, and now that's one that I didn't think would ever happen because I was that hooked.
Just mentioning Hulk Hogan, there was one match, and we touched on some of your big matches with him, but there was another match on Saturday night's main event that you guys wrestled.
Who did I wrestle?
It was you and Honky Tonk, and
Yeah.
it was against Hulk Hogan and Tugboat.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember this?
So
at
I
all?
remember that match, yeah. We actually did it at the sports arena in Toledo, Ohio, of all places. Saturday night's main event there. Yeah, that was a good thing for rhythm and blues. I was excited about that, be on Saturday nights with Tugboat, Hulk Hogan, and I'm sure we didn't lose the match. I mean, didn't win the match. We probably lost the match or whatever, but it was a thrill being on. I don't think I wrestled Hogan a lot of times, and there's a lot of footage out there, but never on Saturday night's main event. To me, that was a big deal, and being with rhythm and blues, and we were getting a good push at the time. So I remember it was a big. I remembered that when you said that, because that's the only time I remember working with Tugboat. Also, yeah, you had to watch how long you were going to go, but they. I remember Vince pretty much would go over to guys, especially on Saturday night's main event, what he wanted for those matches. I did a couple Saturday night's main event with the Bulldogs, and they were great matches, and we had a lot of time, and they didn't tell us what to do. We could put our own match together. But with the Honky Tonk Man and me against Tugboat and Hogan, I remember I remember Vince talking about what we wanted to do, and then, like I said about Bundy, he would have this thing where he'd fall asleep,
he'd be sitting up and he'd fall asleep.
Narcolepsy?
Yeah, narcolepsy, good. So he's going over the finish in the dressing room, what he wants for Saturday night's main event. This is a big deal. Hulk Hogan and Tugboat against Rhythm and Blues. And Tugboat, like I said, had this disease. And he's going over, and Vince didn't know that he had this narcoleptic thing. He fell asleep while Vince is going over the match with us in the dressing room. And Vince got mad. "What are you doing falling asleep like that?" And he go, "Ooh." But, he was all good. He found out that Tugboat had this, he didn't mean to fall asleep. Stand up and go, "You better stand up and do the finish." But I remember that.
What was Hulk Hogan like back then? Was he one of the boys, or did he keep to himself?
Well, I can't really say. I think he was one of the boys. I never hung around him too much,
Yeah.
A lot of guys did. But I met him in, I think, 79, and I worked with him a couple of times. And it was good to work with. But, he liked to party a little bit too.
Yeah.
So I kind of, to me, it was a job. And if I had a regular job, I wouldn't be partying all the time, or maybe I would.
Hey, yo, say hello to the bad guy. And I'm smartening you up. You want to check out Title Match Wrestling. All the cool cats are.
Doctor just came out yesterday saying that they're trying to appeal the case. Have you been following this?
Yeah, I have. I was reaching out to Hulk during it, and I told him, bro, hey, the whole world is pulling for you. It's time for you to nobody makes a better comeback than Hulk. And I was talking to him right before the whole decision came down, and he was like, bro, and he came back and he said, man, he goes, the refs checked the arm for the third time. He said, I'm moving the finger back and forth. And then in parentheses, he put, thanks, Dusty, because that was Dream stuff first. And he said, I'm about to start shaking. And I said, bro, everybody's waiting for a big comeback. Nobody does it better. And the cool thing about the appeal, yeah, good for them. Guess what, Gawker? The dude from Gawker comes across like such a dick. And he's going, well, we only base it on, is it true and is it interesting? And this was both. Yeah, but whatever. And what's sweet about in the court system in Florida is if you want to appeal, you have to post a $50 million bond. So put up or shut up. And I heard the guy went on record saying we're only worth $83 million anyway. Well, that's okay. We'll take that and you just make payments in the future. You know what? And Hulk realizes too, and I saw him do an interview, and now he's way more relaxed. He's like, hey, listen, and I made the racial slurs, man. I made a lot of mistakes. I want people to remember that. And Hulk, I'm sorry, bro, if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I care about you. You got to remember, this was nearly 10 years ago. He was going through that horrifying divorce. His son Nick had been in a horrible car accident with his buddy, and Terry stepped up for all that. Hulk paid for that. He didn't back away from any of that. And then his daughter's getting in the hip hop business. He's paying out for that. And then I think he realizes, like, wow, what I read, I didn't hear it. I saw the transcripts. He was examining, like, wow, am I a racist? Like, almost asking himself. And I think that, hey, everybody makes mistakes. I've been around Hulk. I've never seen him racist at all. I just think he was, like, cracked. But anyway, it's all over now. It's all over now. He's big babyface. He's the biggest babyface in the country. Can anybody make a mistake? There was one perfect guy, the way I look at it, and that was Jesus. They crucified him. So, and everybody else falls short of that standard. I'm happy you're back, Hulk. Congratulations on the big win. Dropped the leg drop on Gawker.
So now we're on the road, and he wants me to ride back with him. And I said, Eric, I'm so pissed off at you. He said, what do I need to do to turn this thing around? And I said, you got to get Hogan. That's the only way you can turn it around and compete with McMahon. He said, well, I don't know him. Can you get him? I said, I can contact him and I can get him. But first, I want a contract with you and Bill Shaw. I want a piece of Hogan. I want a piece of his merchandising. I want a piece of the ratings. I want all this, like was in my other contract. You get me that in writing and I'll get it to you. So 2 days later, he calls me in. I said, you got the deal? He said, I talked to Bill. They're getting it worked up, but Bill's going out of town Friday. Can you get to Hogan? I said, I've already contacted him. He'll sit down and listen, but I want that thing in writing before I'll set up the appointment with you. Somehow he got Hogan's number. The following Monday, I found out they signed him on Friday and never got my deal.
And that was it.
So, well, now I'm steamed. So I got a third thing, and I went and talked to Hogan. I said, Hulk, I got a deal for you. Turner, just a good friend of mine, Jack Kelly, he does the Goodwill games for Turner Broadcasting. And he called me in, and I've been talking to him, and they lost their TV in Russia. I said, my father and I were going to train a guy named Alexander Karelin. He is the Greco-Roman champion, 4 gold medals he's won in 4 different ones. And he wants to turn pro. Then we met him, and we're going to teach him how to work. Here's my idea. We have a pay-per-view. We'll build him up for a year here. A pay-per-view, you and him in Russia. We'll come back with one in the U.S. And we'll do a neutral site, the 3rd one in Japan. I said, it'll kill McMahon. We'll kill him. He told Bischoff. So we do our taping down in Florida. I go home for the weekend. I get a call Sunday night. I'm going to leave Monday for the taping or Friday, whatever it was. And he said, hey, there's no need to come back. I said, what do you mean? You're done.
Who called you?
Bischoff. He said, you went behind my back. I said, well, after 2 times, kicked in the balls, why wouldn't I go behind your back? He said, well, you're done. I said, okay, this was on a weekend. And I said, okay, I'll see you Monday. So I flew back to Atlanta Monday. I went up, I was going to throw him out the window on the 14th floor. And he never showed up. So that's the story how that thing went down.
And you haven't talked to Eric since at all then?
I've talked to him a few times. I think we've brushed paths. I've talked to him a couple times about his production company. I had something for him. But I said, what I want to do, before I present this TV show I've got, I want to come and sit with you and eyeball and talk face to face before we do that.
Right.
But we haven't done that.
Had he changed since his time at AWA at all, as far as personality-wise?
Had he changed? Yeah, he changed. Yeah. I mean, he was a humble, good guy, fun to be around. We used to go hunting together a lot, and but he let it go to his head. And that's what happens to a lot of guys that have. I always relate it this way, okay? When people come into wrestling, guys that were athletes are generally really successful in the sport of wrestling. Guys that weren't are successful, but aren't really successful because they let it go to his head.
What did you think personally as the Monday Night Wars were going on and as Bischoff was close to putting out WWE out of business?
Well, let me tell you, and I should have brought this up with before I left Turner Broadcasting, and we had Hogan there and everything. I said, here's your deal, man. You got Flair, you got Hogan. Here's what you do. Talk to Vern, buy the rights from him for the AWA, buy the rights for the NWA, which I think they already had. Start the 2 leagues again, AWA versus NWA. You've got Hogan, AWA champion, Flair, NWA champion. You've got your WrestleMania built in every year. I said, you're weak right now in the Midwest and the West. Now you've reestablished the AWA. I can get some guys from New York that wrestle for the AWA, and you got Hogan. You do a card, 2 matches, AWA, 2 NWA. Building to your pay-per-views. Eventually you can have crossovers. You can have Flair. He originally started the AWA Jump League. You have.
Do you think it was too far gone at that point in the wrestling audience, or do you think?
No, I mean, he had me in a room with all the TV people, and this is what I laid out to him, and he told me I was nuts. It wouldn't work.
Who was saying that?
Bischoff.
Okay.
And then when they fired me, they started the WCW versus the NWO instead of the AWA and NWA, which would have been stronger for him. The only thing I didn't tell him was how to keep it going. That's the secret. There's only a few people in the sport that know how to keep something going.
Were you surprised that Eric had the ability to build WCW to such a huge success? Or do you think it was people around him?
Well, it was people around him that built it. He took everybody's ideas. I mean, he was smart that way. It was a typical corporate person, They talk to all the underlings, they give them ideas, and then they go and, here's my idea, take the bows for it.
What was it like dealing with Turner Broadcasting Management?
They were tough. They didn't want wrestling on. It was real tough. You know, Ted loved it. It got him to where he was. It made TBS, wrestling did. But nobody in the corporate wanted to admit that and didn't want it, and they didn't want it on.
What led you to
Have
leave?
I buried myself enough on this tape yet tonight? No. Nobody will ever talk to me again. I've never talked to anybody else. I guess it does make a difference.
TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Sting, again, because my role was such a minimal role in things, I didn't really start working with Sting until quite a while after I'd started at WCW. When I did, Sting was always kind of a reserved, quiet guy backstage. He didn't socialize, mingle. He wasn't a loud, gregarious type of outwardly friendly guy, but he was a polite guy and a professional person. But I never really got to know him until much later,
Okay, 7. Why did the entire deal with Sting and Hogan go wrong when you had, expertly built it up that moment when Sting won the title?
Chemistry and expectations. We had put so much into that. A lot. It was set up perfectly. Nobody had ever done anything like that before. His character was over. It was great. I have to be very careful here because I don't want to say the wrong thing. Sting had issues. Sting was going through his own challenges during that time. And it's probably better served for him to talk about those things than for me. But there were issues there. And our expectation, meaning mine and Hogan's, was that this was Sting's time. And he had an entire year to prepare for that moment or more. And we never really, we saw Sting. He'd come in, he'd have his coat on, he'd have the vulture and the makeup, and he'd go away, or he'd drop down from the ceiling, drop somebody in her head, leave. We didn't see a lot of Sting. He'd come, he'd go. Okay. So by the time we got to Starrcade, and this is another moment I remember specifically, because we got into the room and it's time to sit down and go over the finish, talk about the way things are going to lay out. And it was clear that Sting hadn't not only not worked out in an extended period of time. At that time, he didn't look a whole lot different than I did at that time. No, bigger, but not. He didn't look like that. He didn't look like what we hoped he would.
Right.
No tan, and he came in deflated. I don't want to say deflated. That's not true. He came in with less intensity and energy than I think. I know I was kind of like, wow. And I know Hulk was, more so than me. I was like, dude, we've built this up. We've set the table, and you couldn't have bothered to get a tan or get to the gym for a month before this happened. In all honesty, and I love Sting and Steve Borden. I love Steve, and we are friends. But the truth is the truth, and it's the truth from my perspective. He may feel differently. Hulk may have a different perspective. I'm giving you mine. From my perspective, it's like, man, there's something missing here. Now I know what it was. I didn't then. Now I do, after having conversations with Steve, and he may not ever talk about it, but I know what was going on, and it was just a bad time. It was bad timing.
Who was at fault for the fast count, and why was it allowed to happen? Was anyone ever penalized for it?
I honestly, I don't know. I know that it happened. I know it was controversial. I know there's a shitstorm because of it, but I can't tell you whose fault it was. And it might have been one of these things where everybody was kind of pointing in another direction and blaming each other. I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I knew then, and I clearly don't know now.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.